embarrass me in front of our friends.
Right, Steve, welcome to the Conquering Pod.
Thanks so much.
We've been looking forward to having you on.
Yeah, apparently so.
And we've already got us stuck in, so we've had to rein ourselves in, haven't we?
I think we've done, aren't we?
Yeah.
I've been looking forward to this podcast because it's an area of like marketing, which I feel like I'm really interested in, and very different to like what I actually know about marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't feel like I know a lot about this area. So I may ask some really stupid questions on behalf of everyone else.
Well, there is that classic, no such thing as a silly question, just a silly answer. So,
well, yeah, there might be.
I'll
There
let
might
you
be. But Steve, you've come to us today, and the sort of subject is behavioural marketing. Is that how I would define it?
Yeah, well, that's the question itself, actually.
Yeah.
So, I mean, technically, it's called the sort of common phrase is behavioural science. But if I mention the word science, it's like glazing over.
Yeah.
Lab coats, going back to A levels, and maybe doing degrees and things like that. So, behavioural science is a general term. Then there's behavioural marketing. Then there's neuroscience and neuromarketing. Marketing psychology. So all of these all sort of overlap and cross into each other. So I'm really sort of nerdy and just call it magic marketing.
Magic.
Oh, that's
I prefer
nice.
that.
Yeah.
It's a bit easier because the whole thing with magic, and that's a whole thing in itself. And Rory Sutherland, who's a key sort of proponent of behavioural science, he's a big fan of alchemy and not understanding why things happen. It just happens. It's like, you don't have to know the ins and outs of like, why does Wi-Fi work and how does Shazam work? Things like that. It's like, doesn't matter. You just know it's cool and it works.
I love Shazam.
So you don't have to know the ins and outs of everything. It's just magic. And if you know what the magic is behind the curtain, it sort of ruins it a little bit as well. So yes, all of those come into it. So it is behavioural science, behavioural marketing. And you say about, is an area of marketing you perhaps don't know much about. But so marketing is obviously massive because it really links well with this area. But I think it works well in life as well. So if you're a kid at school, if you're a housewife, if you're somebody who's doesn't even know what marketing is, if you're someone who's on a sports team, knowing magic marketing, as it were, if we call it that now, behavioural science and what have you, is helpful for everybody.
Yeah.
So that's what's really good.
I think why I like it is because it's so applicable to everything. I know marketing is just like in general, but you mentioned like Rory Sutherland. Like, even if you're not so like interested or like always in those areas of what he does, they're just so interesting, aren't they? Like, it's so applicable to everything, and you can apply it to stuff.
It's a classic pub test, I'd say. When I started back in the day for ad agencies and what have you, it was always, where do you work? And the first thing was like name dropping brands, even if you just did their business cards. Just so it sounded cool and sexy down the pub or with your mates. And I think with behavioural science and and behavioural marketing, it very much is. You've got these cool little did you know and factoids that can impress your mum or your housemates or your partner or your colleagues. So there's that part of it, and it's sort of part comedy, part entertainment, and then obviously very applicable for people's roles and responsibilities.
So what actually is it? How would you define it, if you can?
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to not to spend hours going about what is marketing as well, but there's loads of definitions of marketing as a start point. And mine's of marketing has always been very simple for the last 25 years or so. And it's marketing is about memories and making memories. And when people talk about branding, for example, as well, it's very literally like when you brand something, when people just brand their animals. So having an imprint and an association with something, that's what marketing is. And I think it's about how do you create as many, in most cases, positive associations and positive memories, and to allow people to keep coming back and back and either buying your product, engaging with your service, coming to your venue. So that as a backdrop sort of leads into the sort of behavioural science side of things. And as I say, sort of putting all of the neuro side of things and to do with your associative pathways and sort of biopsychology, which is absolutely insane and amazingly interesting. It's for the purpose that we're talking about, I'd say it's more to do with two types of decisions that we all make. And again, there's loads of examples, just a quick sort of 10 seconds on Google, and you'll get various people talking about, you may have heard phrases like lizard brain, or your like the chimp paradox and the chimp brain, the system 1 and system 2, which is the big one. And then there's all things like that where you've got the judge and the gator brain. It's all about some of our decisions are instinctive and we don't even know about them, they're subconscious. And other ones are a bit more methodical when we think about them. So for me, the accepted one is Daniel Kahneman, who won a Nobel Prize. So he obviously knows what he's talking about, one would hope. System 1 and System 2 is the best way of describing it. So with our brains and our sort of consciousness, System 1 is all about things that we do unconsciously. We don't know what's going on. It's like bang, bang, bang. It's things that are fast, instinctive, shortcuts. System 2 is more sort of methodical and thought out and thinking about stuff. And the best example I've heard a while back was it's like if you're driving a car or walking to work. That expression where you've had a long day at work or something and you think, how have I just negotiated 15 roundabouts, 4 traffic lights and something else? I've been listening to one of the conquering podcasts, how have I got here? So system 1 has been taking care of that for you. It's instinctively changing gear, looking at the traffic lights, doing the old mirror signal maneuver, turning the volume up, talking to your friend on the hands-free call, whatever it might be. And system 2 would be the one where you're stopping and thinking, right, I need to go to there tomorrow at 3:00 or what's happening tomorrow. And it's that sort of planning phase. And just to show how many decisions we make compared to more of the sort of rational side of things, it's always been quoted that there's 11 million bits of information per second in system 1. So right now, all these data points, 11 million bits are going as per second is being processed. So smells, tastes, senses, what I'm saying, if you're glazing over, what's in the corner, what's happening behind the camera, and on the more of the rational and the considered approach, system 2, is 40 per second. So 11 million, 40.
Wow.
So with our brains being...
Quite a difference, isn't it?
Oh, mate, totally. So with our brains being effectively lazy toddlers is a way which we talk about a bit later, but they're sort of pattern learning machines and they want to do shortcuts. Like heuristics is the posh word for that, but mental shortcuts is that if you had to sit there and think, how do I need to go to the loo for 5 minutes. If you had to think, how do I get there? As in physically, like my left leg at 45 degrees, put the pressure on my toes and do that. That's literally what your brain is doing with these 11 million bits. So with us as, we'll all be behavioural scientists after this, how can we, the modern word is hacking, but how can we inject ourselves and get ourselves into there? Because that, with 11 million bits per second, there's so much on there that we can influence and persuade and to improve. Whereas if it's a bit more considered, that's much more sort of hardened habits and behaviour. So I hope that makes sense.
This might sound like a silly question, but with behavioural marketing, behavioural science, which system are you trying to hack into?
No, that's a great question.
That is a great question.
Yeah. System
1. And there's... we talk about Paul at the end of some good takeaways, but there's a fantastic resource, that's a Wikipedia style codex online, which has got all the recognized biases and heuristics and shortcuts that people use and behavioral biases. I think it's 188 identified. Lots of them are very similar. Almost all of them are for system 1. So again, think about if somebody, this is going to sound a little bit manipulative, but if somebody's got all that going on under the level subconsciously, we're not even aware we're doing all this. That's the best opportunity to move into someone's senses, persuade them on a shopping experience, influence them, persuade them, nudge them, which is the common term. Whereas system 2, as I say, is much more you're in control. So it's a bit more... people say rational and emotional is a really easy example, and that's largely true. It's very much the emotional driven, the instinctive things, but there's actually emotion in making decisions, right? So you're going to get married to someone, where you're going to get married, or what job do you take? There's still emotion involved, even though you're being system 2 considered. So it's not quite rational, emotional, but it very much is the sort of fast and slow, which is where the system 1 and 2 came from, a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. So it's very much bang, 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 I'm unconscious, what's happening, music's being played and it's influencing me without realising, or I'm going to go into Sports Direct and buy those trainers. That's more of a considered decision rather than subconsciously seeing an ad or seeing somebody wearing them and then you going in there without almost realising.
So you trying to hone in on the instinctive decisions for them to be considered at the end,
but not know that they're being marketed to, or not know that this is happening. They still feel like it's something that's in their control.
Yeah, there is. The big word using like manipulation on there, because I might talk a bit later about why I got into this. But sort of a key thing would be like Darren Brown. Most people know of him doing his sort of magic and illusion and that. But he actually started out as in advertising, and he very much is a master, I think, at some of the sort of art of persuasion and and basically implied meanings. I think it's very much that. So there's a fine line between manipulating someone and sort of nudging them for the right reasons. And there's a really, you can swear on the podcast, really wanky phrase, some might say, called libertarian paternalism. So I never think you say that, would you? On
Just trying to work it out.
So it's about liberty and being paternal, effectively, and that's something where that's my sort of, I suppose, mindset for why I do what I do, and it's the liberty element. So giving people that freedom of choice. Some might say the illusion of choice, but giving them the choice to do what they want to do and make the right decisions. And the paternalistic side is helping them to make the right decisions. So whether that's maybe working with the food choices in the canteen, so promoting and making it harder for people to have the chips and the Pepsi, instead of the other brands available, instead of having fruit and vegetables. Or is it about stopping smoking, or giving money to charity? Is it about looking after your well-being or being kind to your colleagues? So there's that thing where it keeps you in check, where you're doing it for the right reasons, rather than some dark Uber lord who's manipulating behind the scenes.
Yeah, just wants the power.
But ultimately, with most people who listen to this, they're either, it's a fact of nature that most people have to look after ourselves in some way or another. So whether it's through helping your own business to succeed, whether it's helping your colleagues to do well, whether it's doing well at school or college. So there is that element as well. So I think it's all applicable.
So how did you get into all of this? Where did this passion start?
Well, you said earlier, Jevon, about being sort of curious and ask lots of questions. That's it, really. I think curiosity is a very popular sort of concept now. A lot of people I see on LinkedIn talking about always be curious, ask questions, learn through failing and screwing up. That's all true. So right back in the day, in my younger years, I was one of the annoying people that would never accept an answer. I was always curious, like, why?
I know somebody else like that.
Yeah.
It's that kid's question, the game, why? You can answer everything. I even embraced it a bit more later in my career to be a so-called positive disruptor, which is an amazing sort of opportunity, where it's to go into places and effectively be a positive disruption. So rather than phrases, this is probably going to alienate a lot of people, but if you're saying stuff like best practice and BAU, business as usual, I used to hate all those things, because you think, well, it might
pretty buzzwordy, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's let's do that ad that we always do. You're like, well, we might do it like that, but every single person is interacting with it in different ways, and there's somebody new that's never seen that. So just because it's always been done like that, and challenge and question things, be a bit more annoying. Not to the point where you become an arsehole, as people call it, asking too many questions, but definitely be sort of challenged those mindset a little bit, and just like, hang on, why are we sending out emails at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday? Who made that rule? Let's do something differently. And so that's always been sort of in my head, effectively. I said about the sort of Darren Brown side of things. And people like to use sort of cheesy quotes sometimes, don't they, about inspirational quotes, and that normally been misattributed to people. But one for me many, many years ago, which was down a path with my wife and I with adopting children and working with autism charities and what have you, is very much to do with Maya Angelou, who's well known for doing lots of great quotes, the author and poet. And her one I absolutely love, which is pretty much sort of based my career around, really, is one of her most famous ones, is that she said, people forget what you say and what you do, but they always remember how you make them feel. And that's something that's, on a personal and a professional level, like really resonated from a younger age. And I took that through into business, and behavioural science and marketing psychology like absolutely nails that, because it allows you to move into those feelings and the emotion. And the two biggest things that disrupts what we're doing, and to sort of attention, if you like, is emotions, what you're sort of feeling, and senses. So senses and emotions are the two things. If we had to really like watch your 1 minute podcast, senses and emotions are the two things that we're trying to use for system one.
Okay.
And then through all of that, they're the most powerful, because everything we're taking in through our 5, some might say 6 senses, is so powerful. And then emotion, we do lots of things that we're in the moment, and then we think, why the hell did we do that? Or why did I say that? How have I just ended up sitting here? That's the emotional element. So rationality be damned, it's more about the power of emotion and senses is like the absolute killer. And that's something I've been sort of passionate about. I suppose one other anecdote I would say is actually that the light bulb moment, as I think grew from Despicable Me, like light bulb, was for my sins. I'm a Chester FC football supporter. Nice. and co-owner. A few of us sort of signed up to keep the club going. But when you hear stories where the game is like you've lost 4-0 or something, or any sport if you don't like football, but what really fascinated me was the difference that language makes on people's opinions and attitudes. So let's say we're all fans of the same team, and it was a 4-0 defeat. So rational, we've lost 4-0, haven't got the 3 points, move on. Same for cricket, rugby, whatever. If you, Maddie, said, oh God, we got thrashed 4-0, and Jevon said, oh, we lost 4-0, and I said, oh, it was a disappointing result. Completely different mindsets and attitudes in the future. If you're talking about thrashing someone, we're going to be depressed, upset, angry, maybe like ruin our night. If you say we've lost, it's like, hey ho, scratch and go again. And there's lots of studies that talk around like witness statements, for example, where if you described, a car hit the back of me this morning coming to this podcast, you're like, oh, okay, you're all right. If I said, oh, a car smashed into the back of me, you're like, bloody hell, you're going to go A&E.
Yeah.
Let's check it out. Yeah. So there's distances and speeds get misattributed because someone says smashed as opposed to hit. People think it was traveling faster than what it was. And so it's so powerful, this emotion and senses.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just when you describe what you're describing there, like that, could you also put that into like system 1, system 2 as well? Because some people just naturally would be able to use the language for stuff like that. And some people have to be very intentional with their language.
Yeah, no, that is another great point, because that's the beauty of why I love these sort of things is, and there's plenty, and we talk probably later at the end about sort of next steps and how people can find out more. I mean, with today's world, whether it's AI, chat GPT, the internet, YouTube, or social, there's loads of cool stuff out there, resources, but so many great people are out there sort of training and educating and teaching people, which is more and more people then are picking these things up. And if I had any sort of, I suppose, mission from this part of my working life and passion, if you like, is to say the more people I sort of share this with, it means that we're going to be better. This is going to sound really cheesy. We're going to be better as a society, I think, because if you're aware that people might be manipulating you or doing slightly, sort of devious tactics and trying to like hoodwink you into certain things, more people that call that out or unethical business practices, that's going to be a good thing. If people are educated and know a bit more about making the right informed decisions and influencing and persuading in the right areas, that's going to be wonderful as well. And going back to the pub question again, it's just really interesting. So all of that's out there. And I think, so to your point about the system 1 side of things is, so if you start realizing there's certain sort of tips and tricks and words to use, that does sort of blur into a little bit, perhaps then into the more considered and thinking. But even so, it's really hard. Again, you think I'd know all these things, but it's impossible not to. To go with your instinctive nature, and it goes against, say rationality is very overrated, and the whole like economist and there's one famous sort of phrase effectively when people say in the world, 10 plus 10 equals like 20 sort of thing, and or 1 plus 1 equals 2. That's what everyone would just accept. My kid's doing things at school, but in the world of behavioural science and marketing, it can mean something completely different. So 10 plus 10 could be, is that person buying 10 things as a one-off, or are they buying 10 things, for their friends and family? And so all those sort of things about how you start looking at things in different ways, just rather than just assuming and taking things at face value, it just really adds to the whole conversation, really. So even if you know the right words to say or some of these tips and tricks, there's hundreds of other things that are going on that while you're doing that, we're going to hack you with another sense, or we're going to play some music in the background that will do something else potentially.
Yeah.
So you never fully understand, will you, if you're really good at it?
No, and without being, I said I wouldn't talk about the sort of sciencey element, but one simple phrase, or simplish phrase, is talking, I suppose, about mental models. And without going down that rabbit hole, that's very much that all of us sitting here now, if I said, do you like my top, isn't it a nice like dark black colour? Maddie would look at that and there'd be a different black to you, to me, to what Jevon's looking at. Or I said, it's a bit cold outside, or this seat's nice and comfortable. Everyone's got their own different mental model based on their experiences. And so it's not just physicality, like if you're colourblind or if you're physically fit or if you're got 20/20 vision. It's about your experiences like in the last 30 seconds, the last day, the last month since you were born. All of us are looking at things ever so slightly different. So I think you can't really sit there and say, in segmentation terms, we're going to target these people or we're going to go for this guy, because they're all completely different at every moment in time, which is mind-blowing. Once you realise that, it's like taking the pill on the Matrix. Like, wow, the world is completely different.
To what you think, yeah. But I think it's also really refreshing, because you are taught, like in marketing, I know this can be used in everyday life, but in marketing that like you have to know what your audience is and they're all the same in that audience and you've got to target those specific people. But using this strategy, it opens your mind up to trying new things, doesn't it? And realizing that actually, not everybody is the same at all. So you can't think that campaign's definitely going to work for that group of people because everybody's got their own different system one and different system two. So it's just really refreshing to hear that, I think.
Makes it very exciting. And also you can't control everything. There's only certain things that we can, if you use the word manipulate or, control or frame, there's only certain things we can do. Certain things, I say, going on in people's heads we can't control, other external factors. And the biggest thing, going back to the sort of segmentation and targeting, I think, for one, I've moved away because I'm a real classic dyed-in-the-wool marketer, did all of it at university, did all the extra exams, so I'm sort of classically trained in that sense. And I'll be the first to say, you don't necessarily need to do that. Obviously, it's great to have the grounding, but half the stuff you think, actually, I don't agree with anymore, but I needed to know that in the first place. But to your point about the sort of the targeting and segmenting is that thing where most people focus on who rather than the why. Or for me, it's more about the where. So instead of saying who we're targeting, so you could have a cohort of 3 people who are 18-year-old girls or 25-year-old guys that play cricket, go to the gym, work in a recruitment consultancy or an architect or something like that. There's certain similarities, and you can understand their motivations and perhaps look at certain messages that would resonate. But when you start flipping it around and instead of a brief that says, who's our target audience, I always have been advocating like, who's our target context? What's the target context? Because rather than saying we're going after this type of person, we're after this type of situation, or going back to the where again. So where are you? Where are you literally? So right now, where are you based in the country? Where are you as in where's your headspace? Have you, just had an argument with your wife? Have you just, had a fantastic meeting with a colleague? Where are you in your life journey? Are you with someone? Are you dating? Are you, just breaking up with somebody? Where are you, like, in your mental health journey? All of those things are basically way more important than that's a bloke who's 26 or that's female 32 works in a bank, because that's great for a top level, and there's way, way too much information that's been pushed into that for data, which again is useful to find insights. But I'm definitely a fan of, I say, I've had to sort of know it to sort of move away, because for many years I was obsessed about segmentation and coming up with cool names for, like, we did lots of projects on encouraging cycling and looking at target audiences for that. And it's all great and very useful, but the real, as a light bulb moment and game changer is when you think, hang on a minute, what's the context we need to be going for here? So if you're trying to sell ice creams in the high street, you could have them as 10p for like an ice cream, and you won't sell any if the context is that there's been a report that it gives you cancer. Ice cream, is dairy, gives you cancer. A bit of extreme example. Or another reason where ice cream, you could actually charge more money, but if the context is that somebody's walking past and they've just had a really terrible breakup, they're thinking, do you know what? I really need like a pick-me-up and I'm going to sod it, I'm going to treat myself. They're going to, not worry about the fact it's a rip-off, overpriced ice cream for $3.50. They think, do you know what? I need that at that moment in time. That's going to do that job for me. And similarly, you think, why do people, why these commuters going into that particular shop in the morning? Are they going in there, buying the Daily Telegraph, or they're buying their Costa coffee from that place, or they're having that sandwich from Pret or something? And that's great again for like insights. But the real kicker is you actually sort of, again, flip it from the target context and think, actually, why are they going there? Is it a habit, or is it because there's a really attractive guy working behind the bar and they just want to see him every day, which again is a completely different insight? Or is it because they're bored on their commute and they just need something in their hand to physically be like sucking a drink or sipping a coffee, because otherwise they're going to be looking at their phone and feeling like they shouldn't be doing that? And once you start unraveling that opens whole new exciting ideas for marketing, product development, advertising.
I'm just trying to work out where this all starts. You know what I mean? I think you might have answered it there, but like when you're trying to apply like behavioral marketing or behavior science, whatever you want to call it, to your business, is that where it starts? Understanding why people consume what you are selling?
I think so. It's definitely, it's the why, really. I know there's different, Simon Sinek, who gets a bit of flack from various sides about the why, but there is definitely something in that. But it's not that about what's your why. It's more about why, or there's Clayton Christensen is, was unfortunately an American sort of psychologist and marketing sort of guru, effectively, that came up with this concept of jobs to be done. He was almost saying that everything has a job to be done. So that bottle of water, its job is to basically, at that moment in time, you just, I've got a dry mouth, I need to have it. Or again, I need something because I'm going to do some sports later on, or I need to get it because my wife wanted me to pick one up for her. That's the job to be done. Once you start thinking about that, again, that opens up new strategies and marketing rather than, right, it's the features and benefits of this bottle of water, what's our competitor analysis, the 4Ps, pricing strategies. I mean, they're all important stuff, but annoyingly,
comes after
yeah,
knowing what your customer is, what their why is.
I think so, yeah.
And then everything should come downstream from that.
Yeah.
But I think so many people do it the other way around, don't they?
Absolutely. And it's not, I'm not going to completely like diss the entire industry that I'm a part of, because I love it so much, and I've had some amazing experiences in that. But I just think as time goes on and the more I've got into this world, I've realised that it isn't the be all and end all just to focus on the sort of models and processes, and that, again, going back to the why is it always done that way. It's all really, really important. And you absolutely, I'm not saying get rid of that. You really do need that, particularly when it comes to the whole world of justifying budgets and spend and decision making. I mean, in an ideal world, we could just do whatever we wanted, but of course you need to justify why I'm going off and doing some wacky, crazy ideas. So you absolutely need all of that. But yeah, you're right. It's more the personal side of things and not the rational side. It's more that what's the emotive reasons behind this. And I think even if you do go back to having the classic sort of structure, like you wrote from a brief, like we're doing a job ad, we always have to put these things in. Even if you do that process and then you stop and you sort of force yourself to take a minute to say, right, okay, let's think about the context. When you're going to be looking at this, I think on your really good podcast you had with Hannah talking about time that you might be doing social on the weekends, for example. Of course, the convention might say, oh God, no, work-life balance, don't touch the weekends. But then you think, well, actually, if everyone we know is basically they're having like a lazy time, sitting in the loo, having a shower, having a coffee, whatever, waiting at one of those play areas with the kids, whether they're babysitting the grandkids or whatever, they've got downtime, they might be checking their emails. So just think about where people are and what they're doing and how they're consuming. And even if that just shifts a little bit of your sort of classic marketing approaches, that's going to be a great thing.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about, just to butt in there.
I think we might be thinking the same.
Yeah.
Go on.
I've got so many things going on.
I'm conscious.
I'm not sure I can
on.
keep up. I can't
not
keep
conscious.
up.
I'm like
You've kept me
waffling
quiet,
on.
Steve. You kept me quiet. I'm just trying to think like how we would apply that.
So like, chill
I'm loving
No.
it. Keep going. But like from a recruitment point of view, then, or like just any business really, like I'm just thinking about the advice we give people to like where we can apply this is literally just think about the behaviour. And this is so obvious. Like, why haven't people thought about this more? Why haven't we thought about it more? Maybe we have a bit, but like think about all the emotions that your customer is going through before they get to actually like interacting with your business. So from our point of view, like we would, because we work with like candidate and client side, if we want to get candidates to apply to jobs more, thinking about all the reasons why they're applying for jobs and all of the behavior that they would go through before they'd actually get to applying to a job or interacting with a recruiter. Client side, thinking about all the behaviors that they would go through and like the emotions they would feel before engaging with a recruiter as well. And you could apply that to anyone's business quite simply and just say, before you even put anything together, before you put a strategy together, before you do anything, what are the emotions and how would they interact with my business before they actually do that? Like how would they be feeling? What would they be doing? Like all of their habits before. Is that a good place to start?
Absolutely. I think just to expand on that, for example, with one thing that, again, we all fall into the trap because, again, it's always been done that way. And it's a very logical, rational thing to do. And rationality and logic normally gets rewarded. Oh, he knows what he's talking about. He's tick, he's doing a good job. So they get promoted, or you see other people doing well. So it's quite hard to sort of be a bit of a maverick and rock up and go, whoa, let's think like, what's going on in their head here, So, for example, one thing I'd say is in insurance world, for example, classic thing I've worked at in the past is where you say to somebody, if we're having a meeting now, like, what's the most important day in our calendar? It's like, it's the renewal date. It's a date when the car insurance comes up for renewal. That's our most important day. So we do all the marketing and targeting to make sure they don't shop around and they stick with us. And we may be lapsing customers or keeping them sweet like a couple months before it becomes everything is about that date. Whereas if you actually chilled your beans and actually check with the customers, they don't give a shit about the renewal date. In fact, it's the worst day of the year. It's going to cost them money.
It's the worst day of the
Yeah.
year for me.
So-
I remember it as a thing in this office.
Exactly.
September, renewal car insurance.
So-
Flipping out.
So just by having this approach that we're talking about, by flipping it around on that example, you could say, okay, I'm Steve, I'm the customer. I don't care about my renewal date. In fact, I'm actually dreading it.
Yeah.
So you're reminding me and pumping stuff for me and and you're basing your whole business
You're
model
reminding
around
me.
it.
You'll keep going on.
Where instead what they
Flipping
should do is if they actually flip around and say, no, really, if I was being like showing my empathy and like an empathy map and having that sort of mindset, is saying the most important thing for me is basically when the shit hits the fan or I have an accident, who's going to help me out? That's the key moment in the year for me is when I need insurance, who's going to help me? So then you start thinking, oh, okay, let's spend loads of money and loads of effort and energy on making sure that it's really easy to make a claim. You don't have to, we can maybe make stickers and give people cards that they've got one number for a quote number they can stick in their dash or have on their phone and they can just ring. Let's spend more money on a simple phone number that people can remember so it takes the stress away from it.
Yeah.
So then you start realizing about the where they are and the who they are again, and the why they're doing it instead of just the person. This is Mr. Smith who's been with us 9 years. Is actually no, what's the most important day for him? And you can apply that for not just insurance but around everything. Like what's the most important point of the journey?
So right.
But
Steve.
it's I find that it's the hard bit. That's where the skill is. Obviously, it's the application, isn't it? But like, yeah, it's great talking about all this theory and stuff, but then applying it to the business, I think that's the really, really hard bit. Because you've just done it really easily and really naturally there. But that's years of experience. And
Yeah,
practice,
there is that.
But there's so much to think about. I find the application really hard.
Yeah, I think it's small. Like of all these things, if someone says, "Oh, I'm obsessed with Japanese culture. I'd love to learn to speak Japanese," and you're seeing all this amazing way that they write and the dialects and the inflections, you can't just steam straight in. It's like baby steps, isn't it? And most things like this. So we talk about it in a moment, but some nice, easy. Easy? As in some very simple and accessible things, and most importantly, almost all of them are free, which is a big power word, if anything, that we can start doing. And then just having these conversations, if you've got one eye half open, just to pause and go, hang on a minute, let's just look at it from the other side, and to do with, I say that the context and the different perspectives and looking at things in a different way. It does become a lot simpler, and it's a classic thing. I'm sure we've all done it, where when someone comes up with something in a meeting and you think, oh, duh, that's so obvious. It's only obvious when you know. And a lot of marketing is, I always think, one bugbear, I sort of let it off my chest, is where many years I've had things I think we talked off camera about when I worked for the in arts marketing. And the whole thing about someone says, oh, I do arts marketing. I do FMCG, I'm marketing like fast moving consumer goods and retail. Oh, I do B2B marketing. And the whole like direct to customer B2B. And people sometimes say this whole human to human instead of, don't they, B2B indeed.
Yeah.
But that's one side. I think having all these different approaches, it's all the common sense, basically. So whether you're selling a can of beans, a ticket to a gig, trying to get a candidate to come in for an interview, the fundamentals are all there. And when you sort of look at it and you go, I do know that stuff. I don't have to be a genius or spend years and years doing it. It's all in us to basically do that. And the more we, I suppose, train our brains, going back to the things I said earlier about our brains being really lazy and like a little toddler, and with this whole thing where they need to be sort of rewarded all the time, just keep doing that. And without realizing, like even literally after now, you'll definitely be having one, like a filter through how you look through, like putting a pair of glasses on, your behavioural science glasses. And even you think, oh, this is so overwhelming, there's like gazillions of things to do. Like say one of those biases I could talk to you for 4 hours on. It's almost that whole they call it like the curse of knowledge, or like the sort of the can't see the wood for the trees thing. There is very much the danger of that, and I'm full victim to that myself, where I might be obsessed with like podcasts and reading books, and I'm curating a library at home of sort of behavioural and psychology books and what have you, and sort of devour them and get speed read through all of those, and then you think. You become a bit of a bore, maybe. Like my wife, I've done the eye roll again. Oh God, you're judging us. You're doing another test on us. Blah blah blah. But it's also overwhelming that oh my God, there's so much information out there. It's like where do I start?
Yeah.
So it's quite nice, I think, to say
Where do you start?
Yeah, start from. So language is a big one. I think is very important. I think we were talking earlier about sort of easy fixes because everyone out there has probably either got at least a website, a blog, a social profile. And you'd hope that everyone is at least having a few conversations in the week to people.
Mm.
So the words you use are very important. And there's a couple of key phrases. So I won't go into all the details of the sort of the magic words and the power words you can use, because again, that's a whole sort of pod in itself. But a phrase around concrete language and is quite key. And I think concrete being sort of solid and agreed and known. And the examples of that is all to do with it. Going back to the system one again, if you use concrete language, which we'll talk about, it means then that subconsciously even you're giving the person you're talking to reassurance, they trust, they're more likely to be more receptive and not say do what you tell them, but more reciprocal to what you're asking. And examples of that can be simple things that, I think of an example. So if you said a call center, somebody phones up and says, oh God, I've got a real issue with our payroll system's crashed. I can't pay everyone in the office. Oh, help. What if someone was listening to a call and the person on the phone said, oh, don't worry, fine, let's see if we'll sort you out. Let's see if we can help you. Nothing wrong with that. It's polite, straight to the point. What would be concrete though is somebody said, oh God, I'm so stressed. My payroll's gone down. No one can get paid. Oh, wow. Oh, I hate it when that happens. Tell you what, sit tight. We're going to have a look at what's going on and make sure you can pay those people. It's a really silly little thing to say, but again, subconsciously, your brain wants the easy wins again. They've gone, hey, this guy knows
He's
me.
sort me out.
He's answered what I'm saying. He gets what I'm saying. It's like a waiter or a barman when you say, I'll have 3 pints of that, 2 of those and 1 of those. And they say, yeah, and off they go. You think, I bet he's going to get that wrong. Even if you don't say it, you're thinking in your mind, like, he's going to come back with the wrong drink. Or in a restaurant, when you've got these amazingly talented waiters and waitresses and serving staff who take a whole order sometimes without writing it down.
Yeah.
And you go away and you're sort of half thinking, I'm going to come back with cheese on it. I asked for no cheese. It's going to come back with cheese. And even if you're not saying it, you're subconsciously sort of like dampening the experience. Whereas if somebody just repeats back to you, so yeah, I'm just checking, you're having that, you're having that, you're having that. Even when you're going back to the trainer's example, I said about Sports Direct. So you said, oh, have you got these in a 9? Yeah, I'll go and have a look. Again, you're sort of thinking, oh, they've been gone 5 minutes. They're going to come back with a 7, aren't they, or something. But if they said, okay, size 9 in that one for you, I'll just go and check. That immediately just gives you that extra, like, oh, they've heard me. I feel validated. I trust them. So if they come back and say something, I know they're not fobbing me off. I'm more likely to believe them.
So
all
that's
that happens,
concrete language.
So that's
Yeah.
like, not using construction terminology, but that's cementing what they're actually thinking, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
repeating it back to
playing
them.
it back.
Playing
It's
it
like
back.
mirroring.
Yeah.
And there's
In
other
sales
things.
side, I would say that's very like direct language. That's how I would categorize it.
Yeah. So I think
yeah,
it's that, like I say, it's that confidence building, but also being concrete as well is about examples. I mean, I don't know if you might have heard the expressions where people say, if I said to you now, oh yeah, so you're saying about recruitment, you know that it's about like 50% of people say this or 90% of people say that. You sort of think, dude, you just made that up. You're talking crap. It's like the whole fake news type thing. But if I said, I'm trying to remember, I think it was like 46.2% of recruiters said that they really enjoyed like getting feedback on the day. You're thinking like, oh, okay, that's very precise and specific and very concrete in that sense. So that's obviously true. Even if you're not saying that, your brain's gone, he knows what he's talking about. It's very precise. So that's another really cool way. But then just to really mix it up, the other thing is also true. Whereas if, I don't know if you guys, like awards or have rankings for other agencies and what have you and things, but people say like universities and say they have the university league for courses or something, or marine biology, in Plymouth are X out of 150. When people say, oh, we're 12th or we're 8th, you think, oh, that's amazing, because they're being precise. But to be concrete, it's actually, all the studies show it's actually better to actually round up or actually round down. So if I said, oh, I've just found my agency is, we're great news, everyone. We're the 7th best agency in Bristol, or we're the 19th best company at what we do. Everyone's like whooping and hollering, and that's great stuff. And we make all them print and tell everyone. It's actually better to say top 20 or top 50.
That's it, yeah.
Because lots of weird, again, like illogical things is that if you're saying you were third, you can't have thinking like, yeah, but we're not first or second, are we? And if you were 12th or 13th, you're thinking like, oh, we're so close to the top 10. If you say we're 20th, which again sounds ridiculously stupid because you think, hang on, we're just knocking ourselves down 7 places here. So we're in the top 20 best companies. It's more concrete and more applicable. And then that gives you that room to maneuver to say to people, look, we're in the top 20, let's be top 10 next year. If you said we were 12th, people are like, oh, so close, I'm really pissed off.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I'm just trying to think about why we think like that, really. I think like almost it's got the word top in it as well. You know, so you're elevating yourself there, and like you're within the top amount. Maybe like you contextualize like the fact that there are so many of these other companies or universities as well, and you're in the top amount.
I think it's
weird,
also
isn't it?
like a
It's the
trick, isn't
shortcuts.
it? Because you don't actually know specifically what number they are. So like in architecture, AJ 100 practices are like the top 100 practices in the industry. I wouldn't know who is the first one, but if any of the architecture practices says we're in the AJ 100, that's like an amazing thing that they're in there. And I think it's just because it's such a broad net of great things happening and you're amongst it, even if you don't know the specifics, that's just tricking people to know that they're good.
Yeah. I think it's that familiarity thing again. Like I said, if someone's very specific and says, like a finite number, percentage, and same thing goes for negotiating, given the tricks away. If you sort of go in and like whether you're negotiating a salary for a job or a project for a customer or something, and you sort of go in there and you say, I don't know, it's about like 50k or it's like 30k or 10k for this job, then that's just again, you just made it up, and then you've got what they're basically saying without realizing is you've got a hell of a lot of room for maneuver there. This guy can be knocked down.
Yeah.
If you go in there and say, yeah, basically it's about 9,400, something like that. You're like, and there's loads of studies that show that hardly deviates from maybe give or take 100 quid from that. So if you went in, so I was going for a job and wanted a job for 150 grand a year, I go in and say, oh yeah, I want a 150 grand a year job. They think, oh, you just pluck that. But if I said, well, basically based on what I want to do, and for me to be able to move roles and everything else, it's got to be about 162,000.
Precise.
And then,
So you've actually thought about it rather than, I get that.
So there's loads of little clever little things like that. But it's all about the language, going back to.
So going back to like language and stuff, because again, just how to apply that, like that must come like really naturally to you. So you're being very like system 1, but how does somebody go from being system 2 to like really having to think about doing that to then it all becoming natural? So like,
well, I think so. Say that so system 1 is we can't really control it. That's it sort of happens like it's going on all the time. But so how we can sort of check ourselves a little bit on that is by having that mindset and just thinking. I always think it's got this really weird title. I mean, with the benefit now of like AI and all the technology, people probably don't use it. But years ago, there was a thing called Flesh Kincaid, which is this tiny little thing on Microsoft Word that was about readability. And it's one of these little things that's sort of tucked away where people think, who cares about character count or word count or these little tools that are on PowerPoints and things like that. But this Flesh Kincaid, it was called, it was an American tool, but it was about readability. And what it did was basically ran a report very quickly in seconds against a document, a blog, a letter that basically says, or a call center script that effectively said, how legible is this? Easy to read. So whether it's the type of words you're using, jargon, short sentences, really long-winded, waffly paragraph, long sentences, or punctuation all over the place. So it passes all of that and it gives you a score. And it was an American grade system, so grades as in school grades. Yeah. And then that applies to the UK as well, with like years now in old money. Now it's like year 6, 7, 8. And I'm thinking, that first year in my day. But it's all graded. And what's another mind-blowing fact, which everywhere you look, I can't believe this is still true, but like the average reading age in the UK is 9 to 11 years old. It's mind-blowing. And that sounds terrifying. But then when you look at what the expectation is for the average, which again, that's another funny word, but for an 11-year-old child is quite high, is that you think about any half decent school. I think when you were at school as well, if you were 11, so either just gone to high school or in the top year at primary or what have you, that the things you were reading, the things you were doing, most adults never go past that. And there's I think it's 1 in 7. Go back to my precise. I think it's fact check later. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's 1 in 7. The last study of adults are age 9, not even 11.
Wow.
So if you're thinking the law of averages, I mean, you might be biased and think the people you work with, they're all professors, no problem. But then even people that like the Stephen Frys of the world with sort of 4 times the vocabulary that the rest of us have, they're still time poor. They still want to get to the nub of stuff without, you don't want to talk down to people, but they don't want to sit there and waffle through loads of stuff if they can do it quickly. So that tool, for example, has really helped me in my career and in previous times to make things more accessible, and made massive results just by realizing that you're reading it thinking, hey, I understand this, it's pretty cool. And there's stuff like tabloid newspapers and online blogs, for example, they're pitched around that sort of grading, so around like age 9, 10, 11. And you've got the sort of the first Harry Potter books around there, and the Gruffalo is a little bit lower. But then when you realise that people are sending out letters about insurance, or sending out offer letters for jobs, and you put it through a test and it comes out at age 14 to 15, you're thinking, then you're losing people. You know, you wonder why no one's ignoring this, or your brain again, you still get the gist of it. It's not like it's completely like, that's again, going back to logic again. You think, well, it's working. We're getting 100 letters. We've had 25 people replying, no problem. And everyone roughly knows what you're talking about, but they don't all get what you're talking about. Whereas if you just dial it back a bit and simplify, maybe look at the colourful language or applicable phrases, maybe using metaphors or analogies and things like that, it really, really helps. And all of a sudden you suddenly say, wow, we've suddenly got X% increase in conversion, or more people are actually doing what I wanted them to do. That's just mind-blowing, and it's free.
So that is still available?
It's still on there now.
Okay.
And what I was going to say is, I've done that. And again, I'm sure if you were like a linguist or somebody that does that, again, these people do that to the nth degree. But at a very base level, I've done that for so long now that I could read a paragraph into a catalogue or something. I just thought, again, I read it going, yeah, brilliant. But I think, okay, stop, do that empathy again. Think about who the intended audience is, where they are, the why again, and just read it through and say, could we get rid of words? Because I mean, and it's really hard because I still say some of these as well because it's so difficult, as you say, Jevon. So words like utilise is absolute bullshit. It means nothing. Use, utilise, and use are exactly the same.
Mental, isn't it?
And another little bugbear, again, we all say it, is that in terms of, in almost 90% of cases, or even more than that, it's just meaningless. So if someone said, in terms of a drink, do you want one? Or in terms of in terms of sales, we're about 10% up. No, just say we're 10% up with sales, because little things like that, they've become like ticks almost, or like filler words when people say and like, but things like that, and using words, I say like the words like utilise and moreover, and when you see letters from the government and things like that, and I mean, I could talk about that in a minute. They've done some great things recently in the last 10 years on behavioural things, but people still, like public sector particularly, and some service industries, they have things like continued overleaf. You're thinking, what the hell does overleaf mean? It sounds stupid. We know it means the next page, most people, but there are people out there that they don't get it. And there's studies where they don't read. They've got like, here's your breakdown of your pension for this year, your annual statement. People phone up saying, I need to know this. I need to know how to claim or what's going on. Yeah, it was on your letter. I'm like, no, it wasn't. And it was on page 2 because it says continue overleaf. And even words like pedestrian access, you think, when do you use the word pedestrian in everyday language? I think apart from me saying it now, I don't know if I've ever said it. And where do you say the word like, imagine saying like, how did you get here this morning? So tell you what, mate, those bloody pedestrians,
those bloody pedestrians everywhere.
You don't say that. You say like there was a geezer coming out the road, or there's a fella doing this. Not saying you just suddenly get all like down and rough with your speak when you're talking to customers, but just think about the words we use. People, not pedestrians. People. And I think I did that thing at Building Brands a few months ago. I think you said that, Maddie, that yourself and some colleagues came along to. And there was a slide in there that was probably really powerful for some people, where I just did some examples of using less scary language and things I've used at DCUK in particular, where, again, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying I'm not dissing people, but the obvious thing if you're having a database or a mailing list is you say, sign up, 10% discount, or sign up. I think you had a chat recently, didn't you, about saying, giving your details away for the discount.
Yeah.
Sign up to get 10%, sign up to be notified. Nothing wrong with that. Works really well. And there's lots of strategies. But get rid of the word sign up and say join, game changer. Sign up again, subconsciously is like, it's
giving something away. Yeah.
It's like, I'm signing up. I'm giving something away. It's like commitment, but like fear. You got, oh my God. Install, oh my God, it's going to be a virus, oh my God, install, add, put in, things like that, enlist, all these big scary words that people talk about. And I think one I've used before is, this is one I think every single person who's got an e-commerce business should 100% change this right now, is the whole out of stock versus sold out idea. I don't know if you've sort of noticed that yourselves, but again, nothing wrong with the common sort of internal chat. You say, oh, that's gone out of stock, if you're selling handbags or ducks in our case. And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, it's a logical thing, out of stock. Problem is, again, even if you don't realise, when you've logged on and you've seen something's out of stock, you're immediately pissed off at the company and the brand, thinking like, oh, they're useless. They can't organise a piss up in a brewery. You know, they haven't got their game sorted for stock. They're woefully underestimate demand. I hate them. They suck. You know, even if you don't think it, subconsciously, system one's doing that. If you just change that and say sold out, which again doesn't cost anything to change, it immediately shifts it again without realising that if you saw something was sold out, you're pissed off at yourself.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I knew I should have ordered it sooner.
Yeah.
I dilly-dallied around. I've only just found this website. It's so popular. It's sold out. I need to make sure I join this bloody list because I'm not going to miss out again. They've completely forgotten that it's not there anymore. And they've taken it onto themselves, which again sounds a little bit sneaky. Well, it's sneaky, but in a good way for the brands and businesses, is that one or two word change completely shifts.
Yeah.
And again, you don't need to have an ad agency to tell you to do that, or a really skillful copywriter who's great at words, or the Flesh Kincaid model. Just go online or ask a web guys just to change it.
Yeah.
Just sold out instead of out of stock. And things like that, you know. And there's certain things like that, and the power of the words you use. And we've got time a bit later to talk about lots of these biases, and we said it's overwhelming. There's so many of them all overlap. So you might hear phrases if you just look online after about things like anchoring, priming, nudges, triggers, heuristics. Lots of those all overlap into each other. But the biggest thing it's like the 3 C's I sort of talk about. So you have like the context, which we've covered, you know, like where you are and what's going on. Then like the concrete side of things as well. But then also it's to do with the contrast. So like the difference between stuff. And that summarises for me the whole, which is my biggest passion in this whole part, is to do with sort of priming and framing and anchoring and that sort of thing, about how you can, by what you start with or what you finish with, can completely change, you know, what you're talking about. That's the biggest thing for me. So the contrast is, if I said to you, well, you've got a shower in your apartment, you know, what would you give it a score out of 10? You're like, it's all right. It's a bit tight, you know, the bit of a drippy chap, 6 out of 10. If you spend like a week or been to Glasgow and you have a shower, you're like, oh mate, it's 10 out of 10. Absolutely awesome. I love this shower, because you've gone from like a real shitty, stinky lifestyle to having a shower. So same thing why baseball players psychologically have, when they're warming up to take a bat, they put this, it's called like a donut on the bat, and they're sort of swinging it to make the bat heavier. So the idea behind that is when they come up to bat, the bat feels so much lighter that they feel they can hit it further and do more. All the studies show it's complete bullshit. It doesn't make any difference, but in their heads, it psychologically means that they can do it and they can achieve. So having that contrast to do with the prices that you maybe start with on a menu in a shop, or what you lead in with when you're talking about opportunities in a meeting about recruitment, or if you're having a meeting about a new contract for architects, say some of your clients' cases, is that by starting a higher point, you've basically given that anchor point and that start point. So then everything else is going to be compared to that. And there's all these studies where, again, you can get down the rabbit hole, where even completely irrelevant things make a huge difference. So some stuff I love is to do with priming, is where there's studies where it's always groups of 2 people, you know, like a test. They get people to say, draw loads of short lines, you know, small little lines and little dashes. And the other group's doing long lines. And then the study is basically to do a test. And they say, just estimate like how long is Hadrian's Wall, or how tall is the Eiffel Tower? And everyone that was doing small ones, like 10, 20% estimate lower than the people that were doing long, because their brain, again, being lazy and pattern recognizing, is like, yeah, we're talking about big stuff, long stuff, long stuff. So you're immediately primed within that sort of time frame. And it's not even minutes. It can be like hours later. You effectively then are more primed to think bigger. And there's things about using words to do with old people and slow and frail and things like that. And if your words you use in copy are talking in those terms, then people start thinking that they're in a bit of a Debbie Downer sort of mindset, like, and they're not going to be open to anything you're trying to tell them. Whereas, or the other way around, if you want someone to be a bit more somber and to take on board the gravitas of a disciplinary hearing or they go to court or something, you're not going to be like making them all bouncy and fluffy, talking about the fun stuff. So it's that whole thing you do to do with the hot and the cold, the words you use, start talking about money, and it can be physical and emotional.
Framing and priming were the two words that stood out for me there.
Yes.
That's how you apply it, I think, to like
they're the
different
ones I like the best as well, yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting because if you, depending on how you frame things, but then you can also prime people for certain things and actions and all
Absolutely.
that, can't you? Yeah.
I think we all do that. We all frame stuff because I always frame like the commute. If you think, okay, if I'm doing like a 2-hour commute to Bristol and back, you think only a moron would do that. What dead time? Oh, it sucks. When I had two younger kids, they came like, 2 hours of me time. Awesome. Yeah. I get to basically binge like TV. I get to basically be selfish and watch my sort of stuff. I get to like eat some like crap food from those takeaway and stuff. So reframe for me, that was me time.
Yeah.
So that sort of stuff, so it's that we all reframe without realizing, and it's how you position it and reword things. So that mixed with the crazy cool world of priming, where it's to do with the first thing you see or the price point. I mean, have you heard of things sort of the cynical snake oil days from the American Dust Bowl? There was talk about in like the 30s where the traveling salesman selling vacuum cleaners or the snake oil that's going to make you great skin and all that, and it was called like foot in the door. It was very literally that sort of concept, which still is very popular today, where it's that thing where by having your foot in the door, by basically like having a small like in the conversation, gives you a chance to do stuff later. And there's studies, for example, where you get somebody to commit to something small, come back to those big words again, like commit and sign up. So if somebody says, I'll follow you on a newsletter, the chances are they're more likely to buy from you then because they've made that small commitment. So that's very plausible. The one I love is the other way around. It's called door in the face, which just sounds more fun anyway, sometimes. And that's the other way around, where you start big, and you go down again. And one quite famous example was, I think it was Bob Cialdini did it, who again is sort of a great source. And it was a study of, I won't do all the stats because I might get them wrong, but the idea was that there was a group of people again, and he was saying, there's some people who are coming out of prison, sort of young offenders. Do you want to spend, a couple of years with them, just being a mentor once a week? And of course, like 10, 11% were like, hell no. Only a few of them would say yes. That's a huge commitment. It's quite scary.
A week?
Yeah. So then they said, all right, fair dues. How about every week or just for a month? And then loads of people do that. And then just to test it, they do another study with another room, and they don't give them that first option. They basically say, we've got these guys, young offenders type idea. Would you look after them like once a week, just for a month or two? And not as many people said yes, because they didn't have that original primer and that sort of frame of reference of, we've just gone we've climbed down from a huge one to that. So it's like a sort of compromise. They didn't have that. And so often we go into places without giving someone a choice, like a sacrificial, blatant, over the top outlier or decoy, as marketers call it sometimes, where you actually have a product where you don't really want to sell it. You just advertise it at insane, crazy prices, just to get people to realize what a good deal is. Because the same thing, like you realize like how much you pay for, I know you're very envious of your sort of beard you've got there going on, but you might not know razor prices. But how much is like razor blades these days? Do you know that? Do you know the price of what's a good deal for like razors? I mean, most people don't really know.
Yeah.
It's like, or like the famous examples are like an air fryers are popular now, but like a bread maker or something, or a soda stream.
Pint
or
of milk.
Yeah,
classic Boris Johnson.
That's it, yeah, classic. But all these sort of things that you don't have every day or you don't really think about, like how much is that? You have no frame of reference to that. So if someone came along and said, if I said, oh, Jevon, you look way better without a beard, mate. So it's only 15.
Not many people have said that.
It's only 15. Yeah, it's only £15 to buy this razor. You'd be like, you've no frame of reference, but there could be 50p everywhere else, or like, let's say the famous example people used before was things to do with coffee machines and bread makers, and you think, what the heck is a bread maker? I've no idea like what a good deal is, or a Krups machine when they came out, or an espresso. What is a good deal? I have no idea. So to give a frame of reference, if they say, oh, this one's like 550 quid and it's got all the bells and whistles, this one's got most of the bells and whistles, but it's 250. You're like, wow, that's a bargain. Compared to that's way better. So the market level is set at that. So I'm much more likely to go for this.
is that why I was just trying to think of like other world, like everyday examples? Like, you know, at the moment, like Tesco's and Aldi, they have this poster where it's like Tesco's shopping trolley. If all of the same stuff in the shopping trolley is this much, then Aldi are showing all of their stuff, but it's at such a lower price. So
It's
that's
Club Card
like
and Nectar Card, isn't it? I think
framing.
the example.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think they're all doing it. Yeah.
Because then with the Club Card and like the Nectar Card, you look at the main price and you think, oh, if I actually join and look at what I could be paying, and then you perceive that to be cheaper anyway because you've got such a good deal on it.
But
so you buy it anyway.
Yeah.
But it might just be the normal price.
Yeah. Is that it? So
that is the thing. I mean, it's naughty. You're not supposed to be doing that.
No.
And there are certain rules around that. So they do stretch it. But no, absolutely. Yeah. All that comes under this.
So would that be priming or framing?
If you set like same sort of thing again. So I always use the example in a presentation before about I think I need to buy a gift box for a present I bought my partner or something. And I think I've no idea. Like in my head, me and my brain, I'm taking out on a trip and thinking, what, £5 for this box? You get first shop you go in, they're £15. You think, bloody hell, and then you go to the next shop and they're a tenner. You're thinking, okay, fair enough. So you buy that. You basically spent twice as much as I thought I would when I left the house. So that as anchor point or primed or set the anchor at £15.
Right.
That's the start point.
Yeah.
And then everything then deviates from it.
Okay.
So I'm just thinking with like terms of business for us, for example, with like recruiters, we have terms of business, we send them to clients, blah, blah. We try not to deviate too much away from that, as much as we can. But would it be a better idea to offer 2 different solutions and 2 different options to try and be able to prime them for, a higher level? Obviously, because we want a high percentage. There's no beating around the bush with that, is there? But like, could you give them 2 different options to be able to, for them to perceive, right, if I go for this one, I'm going to get this and all these benefits.
100%.
But this one, it might still be higher than our normal, but I'll get all this for it, sort of thing. I'm just trying to think how to apply
There is,
it.
and so without giving away any confidences for when my ad agency days, but there's many brands that it's almost, if they're making a product, or a service, it takes time, effort, and money to put that together. But they think, do you know what? If we put something on that's got like a 40% markup on it, and it's so outrageously overpriced, if someone actually goes for that, great. We don't really care, sort of thing. That's just there as the decoy or as the anchor point. So it definitely is something in that. I mean, the only danger is, I suppose, you need to be compelling. So what you don't want to do, there is a danger that someone might be put off immediately. So it's how if you had like someone had to spend a whole half hour with one version and then looking at the next version, you might have lost them. So that's why you see online, in particular, people talk about most popular, or the middle one. It's called like the Goldilocks choice. The old too hot, too cold, just right. And so you always go for the middle option. And that's again, there's a whole new thing. You could talk a podcast about the status quo or defaults. I mean, the classic slider example, where if you're working for companies that want to have payments for car loans, or you're getting people to what's the monthly donation, suggested donation, or Patreon is a thing. People can support content creators. If you sort of say suggested amounts, and you have like £4 or something, if you just put £8 in there, you think, oh, just see what happens. You'd be amazed the amount of people that, because again, it's quick, easy, lazy. You think, well, it must be the most popular choice and the one that's recommended for a reason. So people do these mental shortcuts again because there's so many bits of information again. They're like, yeah, £8, no problem. And then they go back and think, hang on, £8, we just doubled your revenue just by literally changing one thing. And if it doesn't work, you find a sweet spot until you see it losing part of the way. And you don't need loads of research and analysis. And I know one of your questions before we started was about things people might do wrong, or any sort of challenges that brands who are sort of playing in this world. One thing would be being very manipulative and devious. That's obviously a big no-no. And if you get found out ethically, you're screwed in this day and age, aren't you? Lots of people generally have long memories. I know certain brands are bulletproof. When it's something like an Amazon or an ASOS, they seem to get away with some of it. But generally, you have to be a bit careful with that. And the other thing I'm very passionate about is that businesses rely on and wait to have validation and peer reviewed and research. And I think we're going to talk about data potentially as well. And the thing with data is that some of the stuff we're just talking about now and riffing around is that we just go and just give it a test. If I had to sort of justify to colleagues and say, right, let's do a 3-month study, or let's send out questionnaires, or let's just test, let's do 15 A/B tests. Like, no, just do it.
Just do it. Yeah.
Yeah, and absolutely just do it. Nike had that for a reason, but let's just get on with it. And again, it's easy for me to say, and that's why I've made the career choices I have, I think, because businesses and brands that embrace that mindset, people that I'm drawn to, because it's fun. Obviously you can't be completely reckless and screw stuff up, but within our world, there's certain things that what's the worst that's going to happen? Like we're talking about the sold out and out of stock thing. Someone said, yeah, I need to see a bit more evidence before we ask our web guys to change that. And like,
it just makes
just
sense.
why? Yeah.
Yeah. And if it doesn't, change it back.
Yeah.
And you could do, and all these things don't work for everyone. I mean, I could say, people often ask me, I've done training courses before, or I've gone in for an afternoon and helped a company with some of this stuff, like very practical for their business, which is a lot easier than talking loosely like we're trying to do. But I sort of say, here's 10 things, but I'm not saying all 10 are going to be like tick, tick, and they're going to work. It might be one of them might work or 9 of them. But the thing is that some of them are going to work, and you don't know unless you try. And there's another famous, I think Rory Sutherland said it recently, where it's about saying that you, if you test more stuff, the chances are you're going to test some of the weird, wacky, crazy shit stuff that no one else is testing. So if you're just doing like, we're going to do a new, new exhibition at a networking event with some pop-up banners and some leaflets and emails. You say, should we just test and maybe do a couple of variants? That's cool. But if you're just thinking like 10 or 12 testing, like you start testing weird stuff, because once you run out of the obvious things people are testing, like color, tone of voice, font, you say, well, maybe we stick a picture of a chihuahua on the front. Like, why? Well, why not? And you find out that more people buy stuff because there's animals on the front, and you never knew that. You're thinking, yeah, but we're recruitment. Who cares about that? It does, Or let's have it upside down because it has that immediate effect that stands out. Or let's put the stamp at a funny angle. Or let's have a handwritten Post-it note inside, or let's have a Post-it note with no writing on it. And you're thinking, why the hell would you test that? And you're saying, well, because and then it makes a difference. And you've unearthed like gold. And you think in history, all the people that come up with these people that revered as being sort of auteurs or innovators, and these like mavericks or savants or whatever you want to call them, that come out with this like mind-blowing new like transitional thing. These are the guys that do stuff that no one else is doing.
Yeah. There's a fine line there, and I agree. I love all that sort of stuff but then it goes into if you're doing like weird stuff like putting dogs or something on a banner and you're a recruitment business and like nothing to do with dogs, then it's also a bit like, is it going against like your branding then as well? And like, are you going like almost a little bit too far just to get an immediate reaction? I know it's just an example, but there's almost a bit of a line with that, isn't there? And how sort of far you tread with it. That's what I've always struggled with. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, yes, it's easy for me sitting here saying that. So don't expect people who sort of tune in and then go away, and then you'll suddenly get on the plus side. On the plus side, you'll get loads of people looking for jobs, maybe dogs fired, dogs and jobs. They've all been fired. But I suppose the sense in that is you find out what sort of thing works, and then it's not the actual thing that works. It's maybe like the theory for why it works. Yeah, is that sort of where we're going? It could be both things like that. And again, going back to that thing where you don't know why, but it just works. And without being too sort of deep and meaningful about like relationships, I've always thought, and I'm not exactly going to be sort of like start lecturing on Tinder and stuff like that, but the idea is that if somebody says, what do you see in your partner? And you say, I love his or her, her eyes, or the fact that, she plays rugby, or the fact he works here. If you can specify exactly what it is, then the real danger is that if that thing changes, then that's the thing that's kept you together. What I love about it is if I say, I don't actually know, go back to that magic thing again. It's just, it must be the whole thing. Whatever it is, it might be certain things. Like you might obviously find certain traits and characteristics attractive in people, colleagues, friends, whatever. But if you can't quite put your finger on it, that's the literal X factor. I think that's going back to the TV show thing. It's you don't quite know why. It just works, and that's like going back to the right place, right time, the right combo. If you can't put your finger on it, that's the magic. And if you start trying to dig into it, you'll probably never replicate it. But you just know that, just leave that alone, because whatever it is, it's working for us. And it almost doesn't matter why, like you were saying at the start, because it is just magic and it does just work. Yeah, like if Maddie decided that she uses blue pen on like some stuff she sends out, or green pen or something, because she ran out of the ink or the only pen we found, and you suddenly realise you've got like a 7% increase in stuff, or everyone's like loving what you're doing, you're like, that can't be that, surely. Surely not. And I love things where you ask people, the people that are responding to these things, whether it's like music and or smells that you're putting into like workplaces and stuff, and they say, is that the trigger that did it? And they're like, what smell?
Going back to the system one again. There's a really, really famous study to do with French and German wine, which is all over the internet still because it's from a few years back.
French and German what, sorry?
Sorry, French and German wine.
Wine, oh sorry.
Very famous example where, and it's been tested and retested at various, I think it's from the old days and they sort of brought it up to date again. But it's the idea where you'd have a promotion, say, of French wines in store, and they'll be playing sort of like Parisian music in the background and stuff. And it's an incredible sort of like 7 out of 10 bottles of wine bought. And you'd have French and German wine in there, and there's promotion on like French wine and the music playing. So 7 out of 10 people would buy the French wine, and then they flip it round and they sort of have French and German wine. Don't change the setting, just have music like Bavarian Oompa bands from like Germany, and it flipped. And then when they catch people on the way out, they're saying, "Oh, just checking. Why did you buy the French wine or the German wine?" And most people were coming up with like, "Oh no, it just looked good," or "I've had it before," or "I saw it on TV," or "Oh, I think I just felt in the mood." And then what was really terrifying is they're saying, "Oh, is it because of the music?" And they're like, "What music?"
Yeah,
they didn't say like, because you can understand if they said, "Oh, I was in there and it was all like French stuff everywhere, and I felt they were selling pastries and baguettes and stuff." No, it was just subconscious, like the whole subliminal stuff.
There's a lot to take in, like you were just mentioning, but like where would somebody else, try and make it as not vague, but like as applicable as possible to everyone else? What would be like the action plan after listening to this podcast, thinking, right, I really want to dial down on my behavioural marketing. Where can I go? What can I do? What are the first steps?
I think going back to we said earlier on about rather than thinking about the who, is about the where are they, and why and the reasons behind it. So that idea, so just that shift in thinking, like we've talked earlier about people that what's the most important day to them and what's in it for them. So whatever you're currently doing is just carry on, but then sort of stop and have a little bit of a pause in the brief, the contract, the job ad, the blog post, whatever it is. Just have a look at it and think, okay, who's the end user here? And then that is a great start point, because then you start thinking about why are they doing this and what's the job to be done and things we talked about.
Could you, sorry to butt in there, could you
sure.
actually interact with your customers and ask them those sort of questions? Like ask them about their journey to interacting with your business?
Yeah, I'm surprised you. Yeah, I was hoping you would or wouldn't ask that question. It's a classic. It's
quite invasive though, isn't it?
I was saying for DCUK, I would say that we're what I love about working at DCUK is that we're it's in like the emotional gifting world. So no one buys a duck just to prop up a door. Well, they shouldn't be. Cheaper ways of doing it.
Hope not.
No, exactly. It's an emotionally driven purchase, so it's occasion based. It's all about that. So it's basically there's never a bad reason, even if someone's had a bereavement, which is obviously bad for that respect. But we're commemorating someone's life and we're sort of easing the pain and helping them to smile again and things like that. So there's never a bad reason in our world to like buy something. So, but I've said to people, even my colleagues, and they say, "Well, that's amazing," but rather than saying we need to target housewives or students or something like that, that's easy in the sense where you might be targeting places. How do you target someone who's having that moment unless you're like stalking people and spying on them? So yeah, you're right, there are ways of doing it, which is where the data comes in, I suppose. Is that the big thing, and this is something that I've noticed in recent weeks has come back again at conferences I've been to and things, where people say the biggest complaint about data is that it's all based in the past. Which again is one of those things where you go, that's so obvious, but every piece of data is effectively old. So that works fine if you're modeling or doing really detailed predictive things, or you're looking at insights and trends. That assumes that nothing else has changed, whether something's changed in the world, something's changed with someone's circumstances. So that's one thing with data. But what does help is those points, going back to your original question about how do you find these things, is if you ask customers like what's important to them, like going back to that example with the renewal date, let's say, okay, you forget it or don't know. You think, I know, because one thing I take from the session is that I know I need to basically stop thinking about me as the brand or as the company and what the end person is doing. And then you start thinking, okay, what is their most important day, or what's the most important thing to them? And then you can almost ask them that. Not by saying like, what's the most important day, but by saying things like what keeps you awake at night, or what worries you, and ways you can phrase it, and asking people about what's important to them and why do they buy the ducks, or why are they subscribing to that or joining that mailing list. And by teasing that information out, you start to realise and think, hang on, everyone's doing that because they're moving into new homes, or it's all around. There's a thing called like the 9 enders, for example, where you're more predisposed to do things when you're either 19, 29, 39, because it's that thing where you're about to enter a new era, and you're more likely to do all sorts of things. Like if you look at the people who sign up to do, I should say they join, shouldn't I? Who join, sign up. I mean, some of the stuff you can say, but it's temporary. Someone who enlists or joins the London Marathon, for example, the amount of people that are sort of 29, 39, 49 is way more than other people.
I bet.
Because it's that whole, I need to get going and do it.
Bookend sort of thing, isn't it? Of an era almost.
Exactly.
Perceived to be.
And there's really, going back to sort of funny sort of behavioural phrases, so temporal landmarks, they call them, which in layman's terms and going back to the whole language, and you make it simple for people, is first if I start talking temporal landmarks, you're like, is that like maps?
Not a clue.
Is that some sort of like boffin thing? It's basically saying what are the key sort of trigger and emotional moments that we're talking about. So a temporal landmark, like a moment, would be Monday morning, fresh start, new start to the week. I'm going to start that diet. I'm going to walk to work. I'm going to clean my desk. I'm going to ring that guy back. I'm going to do that, whatever it might be. And then other landmarks will be usual things as well. So key moments in your life. So when you've just been paid. So obviously people thinking, let's send an email out when you've been paid. You're more likely to sell stuff than when you haven't, because they suddenly get that impression they've got loads of cash, and then the next day they go, oh no, I haven't. On a Friday is about selling drinks to people.
Friday feeling,
or like summer weather with barbecues and things like all the obvious things that you think about. But asking customers, to your original point, is without sounding like you're being really intrusive, because people love to share. If anyone, it's quite rare that you actually try to be an active listener. I know I've been doing lots of talking in this particular example, but I do try to be more of an active listener and pick up on what people are saying or what they're not saying.
I think some like businesses, and me as well, because I didn't know this, but like I would go as far as try and understand what the customer would want, but like maybe not the context behind the customer as well. So it's like just that step further, isn't it, to actually understanding what businesses want. And I think there are so many businesses out there that think about themselves more so than the customer as well. So they don't even go that step.
Yeah. I think like just thinking about how we've thought about our customer journeys and like audiences as a whole, we've thought about, rather than where they are, the context behind why they're looking for a new job maybe, or looking for somebody new to join their team, we've been thinking about what value we can give them, and then putting them in a group from that.
Yeah, when they're already there,
rather than
the build up to getting there.
Yeah.
So
that's just a switch that we've got to do. But this is a bit of a literal question, but how would you actually ask your customers why they're feeling what they're feeling? Like, you know, saying you're asking the questions, would you do it through like email marketing? Would you do it on social media?
So one of my tactics, and I can't remember the guy's name now, so it's going back to showing my age, but about 25 years ago when I started out in advertising, one of them, my like the planning departments in classic ad agencies who deal with the strategy and the insights, and they're the ones that sort of pour over everything sort of Big Brother style and find weird little nuggets. And there's some great stuff like recently with McDonald's and the whole eyebrows and that, which is brilliant. But there's the guy I worked with many years ago in my first job that I always remember. He said to me that I mean, nowadays, again, talking of silly phrases, they call it like ethnography research. And ethnography is like, you know, these things on Sky TV and what have you, where somebody goes and lives with a tribe in the Amazon, or someone goes like Ross Kemp with gangs and he becomes a gang member. So it's not there listening and asking people, because there's lots of studies that show with research, again, not to completely like of dis-marketing, again, dis-research now. If you're saying that research people are going to just say stuff that they don't mean, or that, because the same thing, everyone says, I'm going to be environmentally conscious, or yes, I'm going to do this. When push comes to shove, they do the opposite, or they might be saying what they want you to think, you know, or how many relationships have you had, or how much money do you earn, you know, and all this sort of thing. People might say the fake information. So ethnography is about more than just people watching through a hidden mirror, two-way mirror, or hidden cameras. It's being there with them. And of course, that's very labour and time intensive. You can't say, oh, I'm going to go and sit with these potential candidates or this colleague. I sit in your office for a month, you know. But sometimes that does happen. You know, you can immerse yourself. But the best way that this, so I wish I remember his name, but a guy in the planning department told me when I was sort of starting out, he said, the cheapest and best way of doing that is to almost put on that disguise. And it sounds quite like the idea of being like sort of undercover, if you like. And so if we are working with feminine hygiene products and stuff like that, you know, that's obviously a bit of a stretch for me to sort of go into that world. Or we're dealing with 60-year-olds and saga holidays and over 50s and things. best way of doing it is sign up accounts for these Discord channels and Facebook groups and blogs. And it's going to sound really like sort of shady that you're like catfishing, but I'm not interacting with people. I'm just lurking and looking, which again even sounds creepy again. But so if I want to find out, I want to get people to change their habits and take the bus more, because we're going in Birmingham, we want people to use public transport, trams and buses. You could do all the research. You could ask people, why would you take the bus instead of the car, and price point. Everyone's going to say it's more expensive or make it cheaper, and I'll do it. Everyone's say make it more on time, make more of them. And then you go down the usual sort of ways of working. If you actually go on, you find a Facebook group where people are saying, pissed off commuters of Birmingham or something, and you live down here, just sign up and just sit back and just immerse yourself. And then you think, holy shit, there's some great insights in here, because people are basically just saying what they really think. And they're saying, you know what, really annoying? No Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
No Wi-Fi is the worst. So all you might do is then just stick a Wi-Fi thing, which might cost like a couple £100, instead of having to change a whole timetable or changing like the frequency or the price, and people start loving it more. Or you go to NCT classes for like people having babies and stuff. You're thinking we're trying to sell more more nappies, or we're trying to get people to do these classes about helping their kids to swim. So all the right reasons, life skill, it's great bonding, it's like a natural progression, all the stuff works well. Just listen to people, or maybe hang around those sort of places. And again, online is best, so you're not being that creepy. And then the amount of nuggets I picked up about people that were not in my space. And in the old days, it was when magazines were a thing. I used to get funny looks. I used to go in and buy like Take a Break, Bella, House and Garden magazine, stuff I wouldn't give a monkey's about, but because that was our client or the insight we were looking for, I basically became that person, sort of looking through, like a method actor, looking through and going, okay, so all their pain points, if you like, are talking about spending time with their family. We would go nowhere near that,
Right.
or good case in Nissan, in the days I worked with them, it was at the launch of when EV was a new sort of concept effectively, and the Nissan Leaf was the first one to come to market with the electric cars. The key and very logical thing, going back to rational and logical, was that it's dark greens, if you like, looking at segmentation. These are these people that are like eco warriors and obsessed with the environment and carbon footprint and everything else. You think, okay, great. So you go down a path and all the comms and activity and targeting and budgets, all around that. Have a little nose and listen around, and like the early adopters, if you want to call them that, people that have bought the cars, and you find out that no one's talking about saving fuel. They're basically saying about, oh, it's so cool when it's really cold, I can push a button and my seat is warm when I come out of the sea when I've been like wild water swimming. Or someone says, when it's, like days like today, if it's really sunny, I put the aircon on 10 minutes before I leave the office. Oh man, it's like having Knight Rider car, like kit. It's amazing. So it's basically nerds and geeks. It wasn't to do with the environment. So then you're thinking, hang on a minute, we missed a trick here, because the campaigns are all talking about the environmental credentials and playing into that. So there's an argument there to maybe switch it, or at least do both. And let's target those people, because, or in those ways. And you wouldn't have known that without almost putting on their
boots on the ground. You're
like, it sounds really obvious, but just listen and be nosy.
Yeah.
You got to walk in their shoes, I suppose, don't you, with their actual experience, and
just do it.
There's so much you can do with that, but the closer you can get to it and actually try and feel what they feel when they're going through it. And
it's something that's been going around. I think people have done that, but it's not like you're going to go mind blown. That's Steve Manser, the genius. Let's like give him a knighthood. I think if those TV shows called like Back to the Floor and Undercover Boss and all this stuff, that's what they're doing. That people are telling them in their pulse checks and customer surveys, staff surveys. Oh yeah, I really love the games that we play. I love the social every Friday. I like the fact that we do 4-day week over the summer, whatever it might be. But then if you go undercover effectively and like go onto the shop floor or sit in the office or just listen in, they're like, actually, that's all cool when they say that. But what they really like is they like the open plan office, or they love the fact that they don't mind working late, because as long as they all know what the end goal is, or things like that. So it's been going on for a long, long time. But it's like you say, it's easy saying it, it's just doing it.
So top tips then for people that want to start, they need to think about the context, why. Going back, just taking a minute, doing what they're usually doing, but just stopping and thinking why and where these people are. Then they need to have a think about the like subtle changes that they can make. In terms of the language. Is that right? And then what were you saying about and then is that it? And then you can go ahead and...
I think so, yeah. And then So yeah, it's definitely about having if you think about those stages. So so it's about laying the sort of foundation for it, and then just being mindful of the power of language and what we do. And then from that, all these, and then because there is so many of these heuristics or biases or the loss aversions and the anchoring, all these phrases we're throwing around, there's so many of them, but they all share that commonality, which is about understanding you're coming from the right place. And I think start with the things that are easy to do, that you can change quickly yourself. Doesn't need to have loads of creativity input, and it's just testing. So written words or spoken words are something that we can control a lot easier than, we joked about having a chihuahua on the front of the magazines and the booklets and things. That might be a bit harder because you've got to get an agency, or maybe you don't know how to use Canva or whatever you're doing. So having the language is really important. And I think, it's just understanding that, and more about where can we do those tests. And then when you get the confidence that those are working, then you start peeling away and going down the rabbit hole and saying, right, this week or this month, maybe I'll look at this book or this video on YouTube, or I'll just look at this, or I'll Google this term that I've heard about. And then you start applying things that relate to your life, business, whatever it might be, really.
I'm kind of enjoying the 3 C's that you said about, and I think they work together really seamlessly. So context, contrast, and concrete.
Yeah.
And those, if you're trying all 3 of them all together, then that's a good, that's where I think I'm going to start. Would that be a good place?
It would be, yeah. And I know we're going to talk about what people are doing well. I think I mentioned about the UK government. So going back to like 2010, the Behavioural Insights team, which were, again, going back to like language again, a bit of a mouthful. So I just called it the Nudge Unit. And David Halpern is, again, a bit of a pioneer. So it was the world's first behavioural science team in government. And it was the UK. David Cameron set it up. So that was, wherever you think about Brexit, good and bad, and all that sort of stuff going on, that was an absolute like slam dunk, for my opinion. So he set that up, and it was all to do with positive nudges and implying all these principles into public life. So whether that's improving health, retention of skills, not going abroad and that sort of thing, all those sort of things. But one thing they came up with, which again underpins pretty much all this as well, good old acronym again, is EAST. Although some people have called it FEAST as well, but EAST is basically saying, again, it's a mental checklist. So everything you do, whether it's say a blog post, an email, an article, a pitch, whatever it might be, is if you have things that you apply the EAST principle, which is that it's easy, which makes sense, keep it simple and stuff. A, attractive. S is a simple element where it's it can approach you, and then timely. So again, it's the context. So there's a whole, I think it's like a 160-page document on EAST. But I think it was Cass Sunstein, again, who's another sort of pioneer, if you like, in the world of behavioural science. He said, actually, things need to be more fun, which definitely appeals to me. And sort of the childlike versus childish, which I think more people should be as well, that mentality. But he said, have feast, so add fun to it as well. So everything you do needs to have fun, as well as be easy, attractive, as in the senses, and disruptive, and then timely as well. But definitely that childish thing is something to go into, and childlike, because if I said, being childish, that's really bad, isn't it? Like someone's acting childish, it's like I start like sticking my tongue out or being petulant or something. But childlike, I mean, I've done whole presentations on this where it's an absolute, it's a gift, and we should absolutely be more childlike. That's probably I'm more passionate about that than behavioural science, I think, and that comes from my own personal background as well with children and things. But the childlike is that you think about if you see other kids, or if you've got nieces, nephews, or even yourself, if you think that far back, that basically everything's wonder when you were younger. You're not cynical and jaded, or you shouldn't be. Everything's amazing. It's all like, oh my God, it's been an amazing adventure. What did you do? I walked over the road. It's just like, you look at it with so much envy, thinking like, oh my God, that's awesome. Like, when did someone put a switch and say you can't do that as an adult? It's crap. You do. And there's a fundamental thing about the example I use when people sort of start glazing over about I'm going off on some sort of like super nanny vibe or something. But the whole thing about childish and childlike, I think, is, if you think about kids, is that they're they're not worried about taking things away and doing things differently, whereas adults are really like risk averse and going logical and worried about failure. And there's lots of examples where people have studied groups of kids and groups of adults, and they sort of say, like, if it's a construction toy or Lego or something, and say, can you build something that can hang off the wall, or can you do something that is really high? So the kids just like crack on and it falls over or it's wobbly. So they just like, just crash it and start again, or they take stuff away and they just, just basically riff it and just go for it in the moment. Adults are like, no, we need to add more. We need to put structure at the bottom. We need to build it bigger. They don't admit that they've screwed up. Whereas it's so easy in business to go down that road, and that whole sunk cost thing where you've gone down and down and down. You've gone so far, we can't back out now. Like you can, we don't need this website for our Lithuanian customers because there's not many of them. But we spent 30 grand and 6 months doing it. You're like, yeah, but it's not going to work. Kids would say, I'll do something else. Whereas we have to like just roll with it, and then we end up having to kill it or get rid of it a few months later. And so it's easy for me to say that.
It's a bit like that. Have you seen it? The ocean, the submarine that. Have you seen that documentary on Netflix?
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh, that's fallen upon deaf ears, isn't it?
That has.
Ocean Gate, yeah.
Is it a real life thing?
You should watch it, yeah.
Okay.
It's, the submarine that went down to the Titanic.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And
David Cameron. James Cameron.
And imploding on itself. It was literally that. He had a new idea. He wanted to make a carbon fibre submarine. It didn't work, but because he wanted to do that, he just doubled down, and obviously it fell apart. It was an absolute travesty, but yeah, it's a bit off topic.
Yeah.
No, it's true. It's that whole, and the other if I was I'm spitting out like the old fortune cookie life lessons here, but it's that whole thing about no such thing as like it's about bad questions and things, but about how you learn. And there's a really simple graphic I've used many times in meetings and things where you always say, you learn like this sort of quite a lot just by research and educating and going to college or working with people. You learn a bit more of actually doing the job, but you learn the most by screwing it up. And I've always said, like for recruitment, is that if I had two people that came for a job and they were on paper the same, and even in the interview they were very similar. If one of them had basically like had a massive hardship or they'd stuffed up, they'd shot for the stars and completely screwed up. And obviously if they'd done something horrific and like killed loads of people or something. But if I'm talking here on like a business level, I'd actually be more inclined to go for those people because they're more of a proven case because A, they've taken the punt on it, and also they would have learned from that. Whereas somebody else has unproven, they've not experienced failure. Same with sports, like who would you take on? This person's like scored like 30 goals a season, or this person's always got A grades at school. This person, they basically failed because of stuff going on and they had to work in a supermarket and resit all their exams. You're thinking, yeah, but they're still here, sitting there, and they're more resilient. They've got all those lessons they've probably learned, and they've actually experienced how to look themselves in the mirror or how to basically sort of self-regulate or whatever it might be. So things like that are really important as well.
What is talking about recruitment? You mentioned earlier about a top tip that you've always said language-wise in an interview that's worked. I don't want to jinx it, but I'm interested to hear what it is.
Okay, yeah. So this is something going back to one of the again, I'm conscious of the time, but one of the heuristic biases is about commitment and consistency to do particularly with persuasion and influence. So it's a thing where you think like, again, your brain being this little toddler and you yourself is that you don't sort of internal dissonance is another sort of thing, but brain taming, as I call it, a bit easier to understand. So taming your brain is that thing where it sort of conflicts with what you want to happen. So you're thinking, you're talking to someone that you really should hate. They're someone who's the opposite end of the spectrum in all your maybe like political views on on topics of the day, or maybe it's somebody who's your mortal enemy at work or something, but you find yourself drawn to them. Your brain's going, oh, this isn't right. Like something's going on here. So you have to sort of like get rid of that by some way. And that idea is to do with commitment and consistency. So again, it sounds really stupid and really crazy, but it works. Is that if you say something out loud or even have it written down, then again, for that split second, you have effectively like made a statement by saying something or believe something. So the example we're talking about is you go for a job interview, or you've been shortlisted like 3 agencies or 3 companies for a project or something. But say like an interview. So, okay, I'm down to the last 4 for a job. There's normally a case where, unless they're really guarded, you're going to meet one of the panel or the person interviewing you, like probably they'll meet you at reception, or at least like they'll guard you to your seat or something. And you just say, oh, sorry, before I start, it's a bit of a weird one. Why did you invite me for interview? Or how did I, there's loads of ways of saying it. Why am I selected? Or why are we in the final 3? Or what did you like about my application? What did you think about why did you like my pitch? And unless you're a complete like cold-hearted person, they're going to respond to you. No, oh, let's leave it there. No, we're not going to talk about it. In my experience, everyone's answered that, and they've said, "Oh, I don't know, because you've got great experience. I think quite funny turn of phrase. I actually enjoyed reading your CV. It was really entertaining. Anyway, we need to get on with the interview." So what they've basically said, and their brain has said, is that this guy's awesome. You love him. He's brilliant. Or this company's great. You really like them. They're really fantastic. So effectively, for them to go against that now is going to be screw with their brain.
Yeah.
So they have
It's going to be harder for them to say no.
You've got to have a real stinker of an interview or meeting, or be like, say some sort of racist comment or something to basically put them off, because they're saying, no, I know this guy. I don't quite know why. Maybe I've met him before, but I know. 30 seconds ago, you basically said, like, you like my experience. You think I'm a good fit. I've worked at this place that you really admire, whatever it is. So you're already framing and positioning it as a positive. So you're in a position of strength already. And then the other little tip, you can double down on that if you're thinking, I'm not quite sure I've landed this, is going back to that whole senses again. One of the most powerful senses, and one of the key word is imagine. Use that in any sort of copy, the word imagine, because that's so powerful, because then you are literally putting yourself, like, imagine being on holiday, or imagine like not being in traffic, or imagine being 3 stone lighter, or whatever it might be. So if you imagine, and what helps is I'll be in the interview like this, and I've said my little piece, and thinking, if Maddie and Jevon bought into that, I'm not quite sure. When you be saying things, so what would you do on your first 2 weeks, or what would you say if a client didn't pay their bill on time, or something like that? Start using words like we, and basically pretend you're working there. Again, it sounds like, I'm just being a bit of a sort of psychoanalytical, but it's really true. If I start to say, well, so, we'd do this, and what we'd do is I'd make sure that we went out here, and, what you'd be doing. And they immediately, they've sort of forgotten it's an interview, and they've already pictured, and their brain said, this guy's working here.
Yeah.
So it's going to be really hard to say, and this loss aversion is another thing, where it's twice as painful and as powerful to lose something as it is to get something. So you already embedded yourself into that conversation and into that agency or that company or that school or college or whatever it was you're going for. So they're thinking, you've got to be an absolute arsehole now to basically lose that.
Yeah.
And it sounds, just saying it now, I might think this sounds like some sort of weird, nutty thing, but 100%.
This definitely works. I actually went through a bit of a phase of doing this with like preparing candidates as well. Like almost saying exactly that sort of stuff, like putting you in there, putting them in their shoes of actually being there and working within the business, saying stuff like we. What else did I used to talk to? I used to try and get them to like talk as if they're already in the business, like basically what you said about what they would do, like future references and how they would be able to go through everything. So yeah, it's really interesting.
And that's concrete again, going back to that. It's more believable, because if you're saying in theory, you're saying like, well, if I was to work at that's this whole thing again, saying I believe and I feel, be more ballsy. Again, it's easy to say. If you just say, I'm going to do this, and that's, without going all politics, you've got the likes of, like Trump and everyone now, and Farage to a lesser extent, these sort of very, very strong personalities have captured the imagination of so many people, because, and that's how the first election in America, where Donald Trump won against Hillary Clinton, that was a huge, they said it was the biggest upset in political history, because they even had Time magazine covers printed with Hillary Clinton on the front. And it's because they were saying things like, how are you going to stop the immigration problem? She had very practical, rational, very, very savvy, very clever lady and her team saying, we'll do this, we'll like do incentives for this, we'll do that. Oh, I'm going to build a wall. I'm going to ban it. Like, literally, absolutely just nonsense, just says it. But people like concrete, boom, that's all they take from it. And they just get that vibe, and their system one thinking is almost like, yeah, this guy gets it. He's going to do it, whether he does it or not.
Yeah.
And that's probably a bit of an extreme example, but
no, you're right.
But taking that approach, that's that's a language thing. And I'd recommend, at least you've got nothing to lose, right? If you're saying that for an interview or a pitch, or if you're going to meet a client, just to get them to seal the deal a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
Talk to us about like DCUK. Like, how intentional are you with all this stuff?
Very.
There. Like, is it something that you sit down and like have meetings on every day, or like, just thought sessions on? Or...
No, I mean, I'd really love to say that we're all doing it every day, like, as a team and across the business, and we do to an extent. But I think the reason why I love working at DCUK is that I've almost got the mandate, for want of a better word, to go ahead and do that across the business. So I'm doing it all the time, to the point where people think they're reading into it too much. So thinking, for our ducks, for example, we're trying to get the colours made and samples tested and things. And if I'm wearing like a blue shirt, they're like, aha, I know what your game is. You're trying to get us to pick the blue one, aren't you? 'Cause you're wearing a blue shirt. And then someone might say, oh, is it he doesn't want us to pick the blue shirt because he's wearing the blue shirt? Yeah. And the fact is, I've just put the shirt on because the other ones were dirty. But then there are other things where there's so much, again, that dirty word manipulation. We're conscious we don't do that. So to your question, we e-commerce is like a key part of our business as well as trade. So that's in our realm of like, we can control that very easily, the website and the experience for customers online. So I'd like to say that we're always changing it and I'm adapting, but probably every touch point or piece of content and the words we use or something that happens, I annoyed the hell out of the agencies I was working with because I'm an agency person myself in the old days, so I sort of knew that annoyed them in that way. But secondly, because they said, you don't need to do that. You don't need to have this little thing that wiggles along, or you don't need to use that word. Like, no, we do. Trust me, please do that. And they said, no one else does that. I said, no, but we want to do that. And our conversion is absolutely insane on the conversion rate for our website. So much so that we get error messages sometimes on the abandoned cart thing on the back of our website that we haven't got enough data. Because, I mean, admittedly, our stuff is quite niche. So you don't come to our website looking to buy a fridge freezer. You know, you are in the world of buying a gift and it's a wooden duck thing. But nevertheless, we've got rid of friction and resistance where we need to. We've added friction where we need to. We've used all these things we've been talking about, like the sort of the positive mindset and the framing of the words you use and the priming, get people in the right headspace. We've done the concreteness, even the fact that there's 3 ways that people know that they've added it to their basket. We don't use the word cart because that's American, and subconsciously people think that's not me, and basket is way more powerful. There's loads of easy little things like that. And we use, instead of saying things like shipping, again, it sounds really obvious. Nothing wrong with that. So shipping, it's like you're getting a huge bloody container arriving. You're like, I'm a wholesale business. No, I'm just want my mum's handbag. So it's delivery. Don't say ship. Little things like that. And this whole sold out of stock. One thing that's worked really well, actually, which I'll touch on quickly, is the language again, is to do with tense, like past and present tense. And it's a really, really easy thing you can do. You can get people to, you were saying earlier about, Jevon, how to ask customers their feedback. So whether it's reviews or opinions, if you frame and push the like email requests for reviews, for example, in a certain way, you'll get the ones back that you want and you think are best. So I've rewritten a lot of our FIFO reviews that we send out to people, their requests. And ours, they're all based on you have to be a customer. So it's very legit. It's not like someone just leaves a review. You have to have bought something and be an actual customer. But we've sort of coerce people and encourage people to say things that we think are more powerful and more demonstrate why we're such an attractive brand for them. So talking the present tense, because what's really more powerful, you think if someone says a review for an Airbnb or something and they say, I went to this place in Cornwall, and the surfing was great. It was really close to the beach. The weather was amazing. The surfing was awesome. Nothing wrong with that. It sounds great. But the problem is, again, subconsciously, system one, your brain might be thinking, yeah, it was great when he was there. It's going to be crap when I go. I know, it's just my luck. No, the surfing was great. The waiter was amazing. Whatever it was, the food was awesome. So if you say the food is amazing, the surfing is awesome, immediately without realizing it's a constant. Even though it's you're doing that. And what works again in reviews in companies, if you say, I loved working with Maddie. She was amazing. She absolutely smashed it. She was great at this. She did. Almost sounds like you either like passed away, or it's like you were great then. If I say Maddie's awesome, she's really good at meetings. She's a fantastic interviewer on podcasts. She's brilliant at this. That shows right now you're a known entity. And if you do that on feedback reviews for e-commerce, that's absolute gold dust.
Does that big difference?
Oh yeah, no, it has. I think, and because there's lots of things about how social proof and people who reputation feedback and word of mouth and herd mentality and all these other things. Again, there's a whole other podcast, but all of that is so powerful. So again, by having that in the moment makes it applicable to everybody. And that's a very simple way of doing that. So you could write things like that, and you can encourage feedback and people to say that. So when you say, how did we make you feel? It's how do we make you feel? So when we send an email out, so if you bought a duck from us, we used to get like 3 or 4% conversion rate. People like sending out reviews. We sort of said, we thought it'd be quite fun to say, did we make you smile type thing, or did you enjoy your experience? And we got some really lovely feedback. And so you can sit back and it's that whole, don't need to change anything. It's going great. But me, that annoying person that went back to as a kid, no, it's annoying me. Let's change it a little bit. It's like, how do we make you feel? Do you love us? And you're sort of thinking it's a subtle difference, even if you buy something once. But again, the feedback you get from them, they say, DCK are fantastic. I love this. I think it's great to do that. Their team are brilliant. Not their team really looked after me. They were great. We still get a few, but I've really consciously got people to do that. And I prime them by saying, do we make you smile? And then funny enough, people start talking in the reviews about how much our stuff makes them smile. And if we want to get people to talk about the fact they're all hand carved and made individually and they're proper labours of love, really, and each one is slightly different and people don't realise. If we do our review questionnaires that say things that, how much do you like the fact that they're hand carved and do that? So you've basically put words into their mouth.
Yeah.
So then you don't say to them, please reply to this, but they, again, shock horror, they come back and start using some of those phrases that you want. And it's even how much out of 5 do you want to give us? Going back to the default, people, again, they're not going to take away. They're more like to keep the 5 points, the 5 stars.
It's really interesting because even that with the reviews, I'm just thinking about the question we would ask is how did you find your experience? When actually that's a really broad question.
It's just so open. Nobody knows how to answer it, do they?
And where do you start? Where do you start with that?
Yeah, so service reviews for us, candidate and client side, prompts, isn't it? It's almost like asking those questions in a concrete and direct way to actually get the answers you want in the fashion you want it.
Yeah.
And it's when you ask as well, because a classic thing as well is to do with people phone up and say, they do it on purpose, I think. So big brands that you've just had a new car example, a new car has been delivered and they're all over you for the first week or two, can you rate us, give us feedback and everything else, because they've got these net promoter scores or satisfaction surveys, because it's probably targeted for them as well. But of course, at that moment, you still, unless you've got buyer's remorse, or it's just arrived and you're in the honeymoon phase. Oh yeah, this is awesome. We've got top down on his cool car. Come and speak to me in 6 months when the battery's failed, or I realise there's a squeaky door or something, or I paid 300 quid a month for the last 6 months, and I'm thinking I shouldn't have done. That's more realistic. And there is a movement. I've seen some people actually doing that, where I think one of the big electronic brands, who's like washing machines and stuff like that, I think they do a thing where they actually go back at 12 months later and they say, give us a review now. And that's so powerful, because then that whole risk thing, if you're thinking I'm interested in buying this new dishwasher or something, and someone's had it for a year and they're saying this is awesome, like on Amazon, thinking, well, that's way better than someone saying, I've not got it yet, but I'm sure it's going to be fab, 5 stars. It's a Christmas present for my auntie, 5 stars.
Used it,
you're like, hang on, this is almost meaningless.
Yeah.
And then it does a disservice to the reviews.
Yeah.
So there's things like that you can do quite easily as well. When the timing of when you ask someone feedback on the interview is that give them a chance. Like, if you ask them straight away, they're going to be raw and they're whole emotional. They might say, oh God, I absolutely killed it. It was brilliant. It was amazing. Yeah. And then the feedback is, no, they were a gibbering wreck. Or they say, oh, it was awful, and they did all right. So maybe a quick sense check, and then go back a week later or even a month later, which sounds crazy. Oh, just that thing you did the other week with us, now I had time to reflect. And also maybe they've chilled, they've just basically had a weekend away, or they've been at home, they've been heightened and stressing and prepping for an interview. They're not going to say the right things. Yeah. So it's that whole thing again. It sounds obvious, but just think, where are those people in their headspace? Are they going to give us the most accurate and valid insights that's going to help us?
It's a great point, because we ask our candidates for feedback as well. And I've always been the type to wait 2 or 3 months until they're actually in a job and then ask them for the feedback and the service. But then some people here ask for it just there and then once they've made the placement, so they've not even started the job or been through the full process. So it's all and I've done that because I've thought, right, I want them to give them breathing space, I want to give them time, I want them to actually be in the job and see if they're actually happy with it, rather than saying, oh, I'm really happy with how it went, I can't wait for me to start my job, blah blah blah, rather than looking forward. You want them to look back on the service, don't you, rather than predict what they actually say.
No, exactly. Yeah. And that's another thing called the peak end rule, which is one of my favourites, which is again, it's very logical, talking about peaks and ends, or there is actually troughs, like the bottom bits, but that doesn't sound as sort of glamorous. But it's all to do with, if you think about any TV show, like previously on Love Island or something, or a football or a cricket highlights package on TV or something. So that's effectively what we have all the time in our brains. So all to do with marketing and memories. So my experience of going down to the shop or go to Pure Gym at lunchtime or something, are going to have the peak and the end and any sort of ups and downs. So I'm not going to suddenly remember everything because there's so much going on. I'll remember standout moments, either like the best bit, the worst bit when someone like me smashed into me, or I dropped my drink everywhere, or the car got scratched on the way out or something. And I remember the thing at the end, like the end rule, because again, it's the whole brain being lazy. It's like, oh, I remember the most recent thing. So once we know that, which again sounds really obvious, that can be applied across everything. So if you think
that's really important, isn't it?
Really
Actually,
important.
because you for us, you could apply it not like the worst bit, but like the hardest bit, and then the best bit, and then the last bit.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right.
And then that's like a whole campaign in itself. So whether you're a theme park, so a gym, a recruitment consultant, someone selling ducks, like for us, give it a practical example, we might think, what's the peak end rule or that sort of process for us? You might think, well, the best bit is they've come to the site and they're buying it again for that right reason, to either say thank you to someone for looking after their pets, because someone's graduated, someone's just passed their driving test or whatever, or someone's having a birthday. It's like buzzing, so that's positive. Then the end is normally like, what happens is that you get like the checkout, or you get like the payment thing, and then you're suddenly reminded, like, I've just spent like 30 quid on a duck.
Yeah.
It's like, am I mad? So it's really important that transaction success page, they call it, rather than saying, thanks very much, happy days, is like, you want to basically avoid this sort of buyer's remorse and say, you've got amazing tasting gifts, and remind them of why they bought it for that right reason.
Yeah.
So we're implementing at the moment, asking some questions on that little checkout as a optional, saying, just to help us improve our service almost, have you got 30 seconds to answer a couple of questions? But what that's actually doing, it's helping us, but it's also reminding them why they came in the first place. Like, I'm buying it because Jevon really helped me out. I was treating him. So then you're going, yeah, I'm a good guy. I'm doing a good present. And then they're buzzing. And then all they take from the experience is the high and the sort of dopamine and the anticipation of buying it and getting it and success. And then whether it comes up for them in the post 2 days later, or they're sending it to somebody else, then they get a second hit when they receive it. So our packaging and our unboxing experience is important to us, because again, that's an important peak for the person buying it. Not for the person who's receiving
the end
it.
is so important, isn't it? Because even think back to like, really simple applications. You go to a restaurant, you can have like the best like food in the world, can't you? And then you get to like pay for it, and like the card reader doesn't work or something like that, and
or
like
they're rushing
somebody's
for
rude
you
to
to
you,
pay,
or you have to wait for like half an hour just to pay, stuff like that. That's what you leave with, isn't it? Like you're annoyed by that sort of stuff.
It tarnishes it, doesn't it?
It tarnishes it, yeah. And you just think about that regardless of how good things are. So like the end experience, or like the end interaction, I'd not really thought about like the significance of that.
There's a great, going back on the neuro side, when they study fMRI scans and brain activity and stuff, an offshoot of that, there's a couple of famous studies where it was to do with really cold water. So people like, if ever talking about Titanic, if you put your hand in cold water, it's like, it hurt. It's like pain with cold water. So I can't remember the temperature, but it was pretty low. And they're supposed to put their hand in the water, for like sort of 60 seconds. And then they had to put their hand in for the second sort of phase of a test. They put the hand in the same water for 60 seconds. And there was another 30 seconds on top of it where it was slightly warmer. So the first one was 60 seconds or so. The second one was longer, but had a little bit at the end, was a little bit warmer. And then for the third part of the test, they said, to get your money or your gift card for helping us out with this psychological study, which one do you want to do again, one or two? And almost everybody was choosing the second one, even though it was another 30 seconds of pain, because they remembered that it was slightly better at the end.
Yeah,
just
so
shows.
they could look forward
just
to that.
shows,
Yeah.
doesn't it? Yeah,
And it doesn't make any sense. I mean, when they tell them afterwards, they probably say, "Oh, I'm never doing that." Like us now, we'd say, "Well, we'd take the first one because it's less time."
Yeah.
And,
because
you've got the
know,
same.
yeah.
It's just they've had an extra bit at the end, and it's like I said, it's not tarnished it. It's
Get
made
that
it.
bonus at the end.
Made it better. Yeah.
That's why I suppose people have like sweets at the end of a meal, or I mean, again, there's a whole study on that, how people give you the chocolates and the mints, and there's little things you can do on that where get people to give you more tips and stuff. But all those, that again, it might, you had a really crappy meal, but the vibe is good.
Yeah.
Or the people you're with or whatever, like the context again.
Yeah.
So the setting, the music, the smell, because of the sense overload, so powerful.
Yeah.
So it's all, there's a lot to go at, isn't there?
That end.
You could
bit
just
is
talk
brilliant.
about this all day, couldn't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I get accused of that a lot of time, but it's a good problem to have, I'd say.
Oh, definitely.
This is like a constantly changing thing as well, isn't it? Like it's always evolving, because like consumer behavior just completely changes all the time as well, doesn't it? So it's not something that you can think about and then just be like, right, good to go, off we go. It's like You
But I
you have
suppose
to have the finger on the buzzer, don't you?
that's what makes it fun about it, though, isn't it? That's the fun part, is that
It's not learn it and it's done.
Yeah, you're always learning
Yeah.
about it.
That's why talk about sort of semantics, if you like, about words. Again, I'm not going to hit anyone for saying it, but the word like expert is like a bugbear of mine as well. Is that I think if you say you're an expert, then the only way is down, basically. If I said, oh, I'm an expert at behavioural science, and Maddie comes up with an absolute corker of an idea, I'm thinking like, shit, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert. You're basically dissing me subconsciously.
Yeah.
So I'll be more likely to put you down or to not do your idea because it's admitting that I'm not the expert. Again, it sounds silly, but if I was a specialist or, I don't know, someone who's got expertise, it sounds really silly, but if I've got expertise in this area rather than being the expert, the only way for me is like to be shot at and defending my position.
Yeah.
So you're much less likely to be open-minded to ideas as a manager or as a colleague. So rather than saying like a guru or expert, that sort of stuff, I'm more like saying people being, for that reason, it keeps changing, is that there's no way any one person can be, sort of the definitive voice. Because again, going back to right at the beginning when we said that we all interpret things differently with our mental models. So someone listening or seeing one bit of paper, or we could have a paragraph, we all take something different from it. Next month that will change depending on what's happened to us or what's going on. So it's always changing. There's almost like no wrong answer, which I love about it. It's annoying because people like absolutes, going back to concrete again. The sort of the irony of that is that we were talking about the absolutes and concrete, but then the beauty again is the fact that sometimes it doesn't have to be, just when we're not talking about language, but just what we do. It doesn't have to just be that is the answer. It's irritating if you're trying to assess people, but
if people want to like learn more about like behavioural science and psychology and all this behind it, where do they go? Where have you learned this all from?
So I suppose I've talked a bit about, I think I said I've got a library I sort of curated or built up of, and it's not just one that looks cool. I mean, I even do a thing, I take the dust jackets off the books to make it look more minimalist. So it's not, I don't do it so, in the back of a Zoom call, I look like I'm trending.
Yeah.
Position myself, like
look at all my books.
hide my marketing for dummies on the floor. But no, I think so. I've been doing that, but I think having, not to say again, I'm not the definitive voice on it, but having literally read over 100 of the best and maybe some of the quirkiest books and pieces on this in the last 40 odd years, it's really weirdly, there's probably only four or five sources where all of it comes from. It's just slightly different takes. Like I said, everything's different. So there's a couple of sort of areas that you could definitely look into, which I'll talk about. But also, because again, with the internet and with YouTube and that, it's just type in some of these things and you'll see someone talking. And it's some of them, like I mentioned Rory Sutherland earlier, he's like, I'd say 70% stand-up comedian, 30% behavioural scientist, which is a perfect blend. It makes it accessible, memorable, entertaining, fun. Go back to that again. So he's a great source in that sense. There's other people who are bringing it up to modern day, rather than the science element I talked about before. But yeah, so just anyone who sort of see little phrases. And I got into it through persuasion and influence for my sort of agency career. And that's someone called Robert Cialdini or Bob Cialdini. And he's basically done persuasion and influence. That's absolutely amazing. So either get the audio book, which is pretty cool, or read that. That I'd say covers pretty much most of the books I've read to some degree, which is fantastic. And that comes up with like 6, I think, or 7 rules of persuasion influence, which bleed over into what we've been talking about. That's a fantastic sort of Bible to have there. Some of the ones people recommend normally, going back to System 1 and 2 and Thinking Fast and Slow, being a Nobel laureate, so a Peace Prize winner and things, it's obviously quite highbrow and it's very hard going. I said to many people, don't read it, basically. What was in it is genius and there's some amazing stuff in there, but read a 1-page synopsis and basically do all the stuff we've been doing. See someone talking on YouTube about some new studies that someone's tried, or how someone's used paper cups instead of plastic cups and it's made a difference there, and it's all applicable, or how someone's put a thing to stop people putting cigarette butts on the floor, or how vaping is like stopped in that country because of a certain thing. So it's that, basically be really curious. And any of these phrases you can just put in. And one thing I'd say finish on is, I think I mentioned about this codex, it's called, where I don't know where I found it. One of these, again, I can't remember how, it's just magic. It's called the Cognitive Bias Codex, and it's an interactive wheel, and I can send you a link to put as well. But it's effectively got those 180 odd biases all in a wheel, and they're grouped around how we feel, how we persuade, senses, how we feel like we've lost something. So it's all grouped logically into sections, and each one clicks through to effectively like a Wikipedia page, which has got loads and loads of information for each of those biases or sort of heuristics and shortcuts that people want to hack into. So peak end rule, for example, there'll be 2 or 3 things in that world. So you could click on those and just go as deep as you want. And with good old rabbit holes on Wikipedia and Google, you just only 2 hours later, you've gone down somewhere. But you can just do it at your own pace. And so I can send you the link to that, because that's, I can't believe what an amazing resource that is. And I think that almost has everything that's out there at the moment. And it's a really, without overwhelming yourself, you can sort of just go down into, why do IKEA do this? And how does it help to sell more coffees by putting stamps on coffee cards? And that goes down that road, and that's a whole new area.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's cap it at that. Because I got a strong feeling you might be coming back on, Steve, for another subject. You've got a lot to talk about there, but no, that's amazing. I've learned loads there, just like about the application and the theoretical side of things. And like you said, like we could be talking about this for ages, couldn't we? So
just hope I've done it justice, really, because I say there's hundreds, if not thousands, of people out there, like practitioners, whether they know it or not, in a weird way, that are doing amazing things out there. So I think if all we get out of this is that people go, oh, that weird dude was just like prattling on about stuff. If they just get a little bit curious to find out more about it, it's going to be great for everybody, I think.
Yeah,
definitely.
Amazing. Yeah, and start thinking about it. And I think how maybe like I got into it is I was just very curious about like evolutionary biology and psychology. And I think the more you start thinking about it, the more you start subconsciously thinking about it and applying it to every
your
day.
system 1, system 2.
You just apply it, I think, as you just go along. And I mean, I'm no expert at all, but I'm just curious about it. So
that's the best way to be.
It's an amazing sort of...
Just keep being curious, basically. Keep saying, I wonder. Going back to the working with adoption agencies and things, just always be curious. Like, I wonder, why is that person doing that? Why are they asking this? Why are they acting like that? Why are they not replying to my call? Always be curious and I wonder, and that's a really solid base.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Manser, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.